Take the money or your baby never takes her first breath. Marcus Brennan's voice cut through the hospital room like a blade. Sarah Whitmore lay in the delivery bed, contractions ripping through her body every 4 minutes, sweat soaking the thin gown monitors beeping wildly around her. The man in the $3,000 suit stood blocking the door, holding a settlement agreement and a pen. Sign it. $3 million. Walk away. Your daughter gets to live. Sarah looked at this man who had followed her for months, who had burned evidence, who had tried to run her off a mountain road 6 hours ago. She grabbed the pen from his hand and stabbed it into his forearm. Brennan screamed. Blood splattered across the white sheets. 2 nurses burst through the door. Security arrived 30 seconds later. They dragged him out while he shouted threats that echoed down the hallway. Sarah lay back against the pillows, breathing hard, her hand pressed against her contracting belly. My grandmother waited 30 years for this, she whispered to her unborn daughter. We can wait a few more hours. Before we continue this incredible story, I invite you to subscribe to my channel and follow Sarah's journey to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Now let me tell you how a homeless pregnant woman discovered a $240 million secret that a billion-dollar corporation had killed to keep buried. 6 months before that hospital room, Sarah Whitmore woke up behind a dumpster with a stranger's hand on her ankle. She kicked, hard, connected with something solid. Jesus Christ, lady. A man stumbled backward holding his jaw. 40 years old. Dirty coat, bloodshot eyes. Another homeless person probably looking to steal whatever she had. Sarah was already on her feet, her back against the brick wall, her fists raised. 7 months pregnant and ready to fight. Touch me again and I'll break your fingers. The man spat blood onto the concrete. Crazy witch, I was just going to ask for a cigarette. He shuffled away into the gray Nashville morning, muttering curses. Sarah lowered her fists. Her hands were shaking. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. The baby kicked. I know, Sarah whispered, pressing her palm against her swollen belly. I know, we're okay. They weren't okay. They hadn't been okay for 8 months. Sarah slid back down the wall, pulled the damp sleeping bag around her shoulders, and tried to remember what warmth felt like. 8 months ago, she had been a registered nurse at Vanderbilt Medical Center. She had an apartment, a car that ran, a boyfriend named Daniel who talked about marriage and painted nurseries in his imagination. Then Daniel died. The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. She remembered the exact time because the clock on her nightstand had burned itself into her memory. She remembered the highway patrol officer's voice, gentle and practiced delivering words that didn't make sense. Black ice on I-40, a semi-truck. He didn't suffer, ma'am. Sarah had said thank you and hung up. She'd sat in the dark until sunrise, waiting for Daniel to walk through the door and tell her it was a mistake. He never came. The funeral cost $4,000. The medical bills arrived the same week. Daniel's student loans didn't die with him. His life insurance policy had lapsed 3 months earlier because he'd forgotten to mail the payment. She lost the apartment in week 6, the car in week 8, the job in week 10 because you can't work 12-hour shifts when you're sleeping in shelters and throwing up from stress in supply closets. Her mother had died 2 years before Daniel. No siblings, no family, no one, just Sarah and a baby who would arrive whether she was ready or not. Hey, you behind the dumpster! Sarah's head snapped up. A woman in a county jacket was picking her way through the alley, holding an envelope like it might explode. Official-looking, determined, the kind of person who brought eviction notices and court summons. Sarah's first instinct was to run, but running wasn't possible anymore. Not at 7 months pregnant, not with ankles swollen to twice their size. Are you Sarah Whitmore? Who's asking? County probate office. The woman stopped 10 feet away. I've been trying to reach you for 3 months. It's about your grandmother. Sarah's stomach dropped. Eleanor Whitmore? The woman continued. She passed away 2 years ago. You're listed as her only living heir. Eleanor. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Crazy Eleanor. Paranoid Eleanor. The grandmother who talked to trees and collected rocks and swore that the mining company was stealing from the mountain. Sarah's mother had believed the crazy part strongly enough to pack their bags when Sarah was 8 years old. They'd driven down from the mountains in the middle of the night, and Mom had never looked back. Don't ever become like her, Mom had said. Promise me, Sarah. Promise me you won't end up like that crazy old woman. Sarah had promised, and she'd kept that promise by forgetting Eleanor existed. Now Eleanor was dead, and apparently she'd left something behind. The estate was delayed, the county woman was saying. Property disputes, legal complications, but it's been resolved. The cabin and 80 acres are yours now, free and clear. Cabin. The woman pulled a photograph from the envelope, handed it to Sarah. A log cabin, old, weathered. The roof sagged in the middle. The porch had collapsed into a pile of rotting lumber. Windows gaped like wounds. "It's so old," Daniel had said once, laughing, when he'd found this photograph in a box of Sarah's things. "Your grandmother really lived there." She'd told him the story, about Eleanor's theories, about how everyone dismissed her as paranoid, about how she died alone in those mountains proving nothing. Daniel had listened the way he always listened. Completely. Then he'd said something that stayed with her. What if she was right? What if she just couldn't prove it yet? Sarah stared at the photograph. Her hands trembled. "There's more." The county woman pulled out a sealed envelope. Cream-colored. Expensive paper. Sarah's name on the front in handwriting she recognized from birthday cards that had stopped coming when she was 12. This was with her personal effects. Instructions said to give it to you directly. Only you. Sarah took the envelope, felt its weight. Why me? She had 30 years to contact me. She never did. "I don't know, ma'am." The county woman's voice softened. "But whatever your grandmother was, she made sure you'd inherit that property. She fought 3 lawsuits to keep it in the family. Spent her last years making sure it would pass to you." The words landed like stones in still water. Eleanor had fought for her. For 30 years, the grandmother Sarah had forgotten had been fighting to make sure Sarah would have something to come home to. "The deed is in the envelope. Keys to the property are with a neighbor named Henry Dawson." The county woman backed away. "I'm sorry for your loss, whatever it was." She left. Sarah sat behind the dumpster holding the photograph of a cabin she barely remembered feeling the baby kick against her ribs. $41 in her pocket. Enough for 1 bus ticket. The cabin probably had no heat, no electricity, no running water. But it had walls, a roof, a door that might lock. And Eleanor had left a letter. Sarah opened it. The handwriting was cramped, but arthritic, formed by fingers that shook but never stopped. "Sarah, if you're reading this, you found your way back. Good. I know what they said about me. Crazy old woman, paranoid, dangerous. Your mother believed them. I don't blame her. The lie was convincing. But I'm not crazy. I never was. Check behind the stone wall. Marker 7, the deer trail past the lightning oak. You'll know it when you see it. I couldn't tell anyone. They would have destroyed it. But you're blood. You're strong. You'll understand. The truth is heavy, but you can carry it. I love you. I always did. Even when the world made you forget me. Finish this, Eleanor." Sarah read the letter 3 times. Then she stuffed it in her pocket, gathered her sleeping bag, and started walking toward the bus station. The bus to Gatlinburg left at 2:15 p.m. Sarah paid with crumpled bills and took a seat in the back row. The city fell away. Nashville's sprawl thinned. The hills rose. The trees thickened. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold window and watched the world she knew disappear behind her. The last time she'd made this trip, she'd been 8 years old. Her mother had been driving, crying, swearing she'd never go back. "She's sick, Sarah. In her head. She sees enemies everywhere. I won't let you grow up in that madness." But maybe the madness was the only thing that could save her now. The bus dropped her at a closed gas station where Hanson Ridge Road began climbing into the mountains. Sarah started walking. 2 miles to the cabin. 2 miles on swollen ankles and an aching back. 2 miles with a baby pressing against her bladder and her lungs and her spine. She made it in 90 minutes, stopping every few hundred yards to rest against trees, to catch her breath, to convince her body to keep moving. The cabin appeared through the trees like a ghost, worse than the photograph. The roof sagged more severely. More boards had peeled away from the frame. The porch was a sculpture of collapse. But smoke rose from the chimney. Sarah stopped, stared. Someone was inside. She found a fallen branch, thick enough to hurt someone if she swung hard enough. She approached the cabin slowly, her heart hammering her grip tight on the makeshift weapon. "Hello, is anyone there?" The door opened. A man stood in the doorway. 70 years old, maybe older, face weathered by decades of mountain living, hands gnarled with arthritis, eyes that had seen too much. "You look just like her." Sarah didn't lower the branch. "Who are you?" "Henry Dawson, Eleanor's neighbor. I've been keeping the cabin ready." "Ready for what?" "For you." Sarah's grip tightened. "How did you know I was coming?" "I didn't, but Eleanor did." Henry stepped back from the doorway. "She told me before she died. Keep the cabin warm, Henry. Sarah will come home. I've been lighting that fire every week for 2 years, waiting." "Why would she think I'd come back? I hadn't seen her in 24 years. Henry's eyes flickered with something Sarah couldn't read. Because she knew things, always did. She knew you'd need a place. She knew you'd find your way. He gestured into the cabin. Come inside. You're pregnant, and it's cold, and we need to talk. Sarah hesitated. I'm 73 years old, Henry said. I've got arthritis in both knees and a bad hip. You could outrun me even at 7 months pregnant, but if it makes you feel better, keep the stick. Sarah kept the stick. Inside the cabin was warmer than she'd expected. Cleaner, too. The fire crackled in the cast iron stove. The floors had been swept. Candles sat ready on the mantel. You've been taking care of it. Every week. For 2 years. Henry closed the door. Eleanor was my only real friend in these mountains. Taking care of her place is the least I could do. Sarah walked through the small space. The rocking chair she remembered from childhood, the kitchen with the hand pump, the narrow hallway leading to the bedrooms. Memory pressed against her chest like a physical weight. She'd been happy here once, before her mother decided Eleanor was crazy. Before they'd fled in the middle of the night, before Sarah had learned to forget. The letter mentioned a stone wall, marker 7. Henry went still. You read her letter. She told me to check behind the stone wall, something about truth. Henry moved to the window, looked out at the darkening forest. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Before I tell you anything, you need to understand something. Your grandmother wasn't crazy. She was right about all of it, and the people she was right about are dangerous. What people will show in a Summit Mining Corporation? Henry spat the name like poison. They've been pulling lithium out of these mountains for 30 years, making billions, and they did it by stealing from people like your grandmother. Sarah sank into the rocking chair. Her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Lithium. Worth almost nothing in 1987, worth a fortune now. Electric cars, batteries, clean energy. Henry turned to face her. Summit drilled on Eleanor's land illegally, took samples, found one of the richest deposits in the eastern United States. Then they spent 3 decades calling her crazy, so nobody would believe her when she told them what they did. How do you know this? Because I worked for them. The words dropped like stones. 35 years, drill technician. I was there when they punched holes in Eleanor's land. I logged the samples myself. Henry's voice cracked. I had a wife, kids in school. I needed the job, so I kept my mouth shut while they destroyed her reputation. Sarah stared at him. This old man who had been her grandmother's friend, her grandmother's betrayer. You knew she was telling the truth. For 30 years. Yes. And you never said anything. No. Henry couldn't meet her eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But Eleanor forgave me anyway. When she got sick, she came to me. Said she'd hidden the proof. Said her granddaughter would come back someday and finish what she started. The stone building. About a mile up the mountain, she built it herself, stone by stone, filled it with everything Summit tried to destroy. Henry pulled a key from his pocket. Brass, old, worn smooth. Core samples, survey maps, documents I smuggled out over the years, proof that Summit stole from her. How much, Basu? Conservative estimate $240 million worth of lithium, under 80 acres of Whitmore land. The number meant nothing. It was too big, too impossible. But the baby kicked and suddenly the number meant everything. There's something else. Henry reached into his jacket, pulled out a photograph, old, faded. 2 women standing in front of the cabin. Sarah recognized Eleanor immediately. Older than she remembered, but unmistakable. The other woman made her blood run cold. That's my mother. Yes. When was this taken? 10 years ago, January, she came back. Sarah's hands shook. My mother died 8 years ago. She never mentioned coming here. She never mentioned Eleanor. She told me Eleanor was dead. She lied. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the arms of the rocking chair. Why? Why would she lie? Because she was scared. Henry took the photograph back. Your mother came back to make peace with Eleanor. She stayed for 3 days. Eleanor showed her everything. The evidence, the conspiracy, the truth about Summit. What happened? Your mother left, said she needed to think, said she'd come back with lawyers, with reporters, with people who could help. Henry's face darkened. 2 weeks later, 2 men came to Eleanor's cabin. They told her that if she ever contacted her daughter again, if she ever tried to go public with her evidence, something bad would happen to you. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. They threatened me. They threatened to kill you, specifically, by name." Henry's voice hardened. "Summit doesn't make empty threats. Your mother knew that. She cut off all contact with Eleanor to protect you, and she took the secret to her grave." Sarah thought about her mother's last years. The paranoia, the anxiety, the way she'd check the locks 3 times before bed, the way she'd flinch when strangers approached. She'd thought it was mental illness, depression, the slow decay of a lonely woman. It was fear. Her mother had been living in fear for 10 years. Eleanor kept collecting evidence, kept building her case, but she couldn't go public without putting you in danger. Henry pressed the key into Sarah's palm. "When she died, she left everything to you. The land, the cabin, the proof, and the choice." "What choice? Fight or walk away?" Henry's eyes met hers. "If you take that evidence to a lawyer, you can destroy Summit, but they'll come after you. They'll threaten, they'll bribe, they might kill. You have to decide if the truth is worth dying for." Sarah looked at the key, felt its weight. She thought about Daniel, about her mother, about Eleanor fighting alone for 30 years while everyone called her crazy. She thought about the baby growing inside her, the daughter who would be born into a world where powerful men could steal and lie and threaten without consequence. "Where's the stone building? Sarah? Where is it?" Henry studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his face. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "I'll show you tomorrow. It's too dark now, and you need rest." "No, now. You're 7 months pregnant. The trail is steep. If something happens, then something happens." Sarah stood. Her back screamed. Her ankles throbbed. She didn't care. "My grandmother spent 30 years waiting for someone to believe her. My mother spent 10 years living in fear. I've spent 8 months sleeping behind dumpsters while the people who destroyed my family sit in boardrooms counting money they stole." She grabbed her coat. "I'm done waiting." The deer trail started behind the woodpile. Sarah followed Henry into the darkness, her phone's flashlight cutting through the trees. The climb was brutal. Every step sent pain shooting through her lower back. Her ankles felt like they might shatter. Twice she had to stop, lean against trees, fight the urge to collapse. But she kept moving. The baby kicked constantly. Not distress, encouragement. Keep going, keep going, keep going. "You're strong," Henry's voice came from ahead. "Like Eleanor. She used to climb this trail every day, even in her 70s. Even when her heart was failing." "Tell me about her. The real her, not what my mother said." "Eleanor Whitmore was the most stubborn woman I ever met. She knew Summit was lying before anyone else. She spent 30 years collecting evidence that no one would look at." Henry stopped to help Sarah over a fallen log. "She could have sold the land, could have taken their money and lived comfortable, but she said the mountain was her witness. She wouldn't let them silence it." "Why did she forgive you? You betrayed her." Henry was quiet for a long moment. "Because she understood fear. She knew what it meant to have people you love used against you." He looked back at Sarah. "And because she believed people could change. She believed I would make it right someday." "Will you—" "I'm trying." The lightning-split oak appeared in the flashlight beam. Massive, ancient, its trunk cleaved by some long-ago storm. "Turn left here, another quarter mile." Sarah's legs burned. Her lungs ached, but she kept climbing. Then she heard it. Engines, far below on the gravel road. "Henry." "I hear it." His voice had changed. Urgent, afraid. "Move, now." "Who is it?" "Summit monitors this road. They photograph every car that comes up here. If they saw you arrive—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Sarah moved faster. The pain in her back became background noise. The baby went still as if she understood the danger. The stone building appeared through the trees. Small, solid, covered in vines. "Key?" Henry held out his hand. Sarah gave it to him. He fumbled with the lock. His hands were shaking. "Hurry! I'm trying." The lock clicked. The door swung open. "Get inside. Now!" Sarah stumbled through the doorway. Darkness, complete and absolute. Henry pulled the door shut behind them. "Don't turn on your light. They might see it through the cracks." Sarah pressed herself against the cold stone wall. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her skull. Outside, the engines grew louder. Stopped. Doors slammed. Voices. "Trail goes up here." "How far?" "Half mile, maybe. She's pregnant. Can't have gotten far." Flashlight beams swept through the trees outside the building. Sarah could see them through tiny gaps in the stonework, bright white lines cutting through the darkness. Henry's hand found her arm, squeezed, a warning to stay silent. The footsteps came closer, stopped outside the door. "What's this, some old shed, probably nothing." "Check it anyway." Someone tried the handle. The lock held. They pushed harder. "Locked. Nobody's been here in years." "Fine, keep moving. She's got to be somewhere." The footsteps retreated, the flashlight beams swept away, the voices faded into the forest. Sarah didn't breathe for another 5 minutes. Finally, Henry whispered, "They're gone, for now." Sarah turned on her phone's flashlight and saw what Eleanor had spent 30 years protecting. Crates, dozens of them, stacked floor to ceiling, stamped with faded logos. Summit Mining Corporation, confidential, 1987. Sarah moved deeper into the building. Her light swept across canvas-wrapped cylinders, file boxes, rolled documents, photographs. My God, she documented everything. Henry opened the nearest crate. Inside, wrapped in cloth, were metal tubes, core samples. These prove exactly where Summit drilled. Every single one came from Whitmore land. Sarah picked up a cylinder. It was warm, not room temperature, genuinely warm. What's in them? Spodumene, lithium-bearing mineral. Henry pointed to the stamped coordinates. See these numbers, cross-reference them with the survey maps in that box. They fall dead center in your grandmother's property, a mile inside the legal boundary. Sarah photographed the cylinder, then another, then another. There's more. Henry moved to a file box, pulled out a leather-bound ledger. I kept this. Personal log of every illegal drilling operation I was part of. Dates, locations, supervisors. Every crime Summit committed written in my own hand. Why did you keep it? Insurance and guilt. Henry handed her the ledger. I always knew this day would come. I wanted to be ready. Sarah photographed every page. In the corner behind a stack of crates, she found something else. A box labeled personal. Inside were photographs. Eleanor at various ages. The cabin in better days. A woman Sarah didn't recognize at first. Then she did. That's my mother, young. Look underneath. Sarah dug deeper. Found letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to her. Eleanor wrote to you every year on your birthday. Every single year for 24 years. Henry's voice was thick. Your mother intercepted them. Eleanor found out after your mother died. The post office forwarded them back. Sarah opened one at random, dated on her 16th birthday. Dear Sarah, you're 16 today, almost a woman. I wonder what you look like now. If you're happy, if you found love, I can't contact you. They're watching. But I think about you every day. I pray for you every night. Someday you'll understand why I couldn't be there. Someday you'll know the truth. I love you. I always will. Even if you never know it. Your grandmother, Eleanor? Sarah's hands trembled. 24 years of letters. 24 years of love she never knew existed. I thought she forgot about me. She never stopped thinking about you, not for one day. Outside, an engine started. The searchers were leaving, for now. We need to get this evidence out of here. Henry started gathering documents. If Summit finds this place... They already found it. Sarah pointed to the door. Fresh scratches marked the wood around the lock. Someone had tried to break in recently. They know it's here, they just don't know how to get in. Henry's face went pale. Then we don't have much time. They'll be back with better tools. We need to move everything tonight. Where? I know a lawyer, Victoria Chen, best in 3 counties. She handles cases like this. Sarah looked around at 30 years of evidence, 30 years of truth. Can we win? I don't know. Summit has money, power, politicians in their pockets. Henry met her eyes. But your grandmother believed you could. She bet everything on it. Sarah picked up Eleanor's box of letters, held them against her chest. Her grandmother had spent 30 years alone. Her mother had spent 10 years afraid. Generations of Whitmore women broken by men who thought they could steal without consequence. The baby kicked, strong, defiant. Then let's finish this. They worked for 3 hours loading evidence into the bags they could carry. Sarah photographed everything they couldn't take, creating a digital backup on her phone. By the time they finished, the sky was beginning to lighten. Henry locked the stone building. I'll come back tonight with my truck, move the rest. And if Summit comes back first, then we use what we have. He handed her a flash drive. Everything you photographed is on here. Keep it safe. Make copies. Send them to everyone you trust. I don't trust anyone. Then trust me. Just for today. Henry started down the trail. Chen's office is in Gatlinburg. I'll take you there this afternoon. Sarah followed him down the mountain, her body screaming, her mind racing. They were halfway to the cabin when they saw the smoke, black, thick, rising from exactly where they'd left. Henry started running. Sarah ran after him, her pregnant body protesting every step. The cabin was on fire. Flames poured from the windows. The roof was already collapsing. Everything Eleanor had left behind, everything Sarah had just inherited, was being consumed by fire. A black SUV sat at the edge of the clearing. Engine running, 2 men standing beside it watching the cabin burn. One of them saw Sarah. He smiled. Then he got in the SUV and drove away. Henry fell to his knees in the dirt. No, 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 no. Sarah stared at the flames, at the destruction of her grandmother's home, at the message Summit was sending. We know you're here. We know what you found. And we can burn everything you love. She pulled out her phone. The photographs were still there. The digital evidence survived. But the cabin was gone. The letters were gone. The last physical connection to a grandmother she'd never really known. Something hardened inside Sarah Whitmore. Something cold and sharp and absolutely certain. Call the lawyer. Henry looked up. His face was streaked with tears and ash. What? Call Victoria Chen? Right now? Sarah's voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. They want a war. They've got one. The baby kicked. This time it felt like applause. Victoria Chen's office sat on Oak Street in Gatlinburg, a converted Victorian house with a crooked sign that read, "No appointment, no problem," in hand-painted letters. Sarah stood on the sidewalk, still smelling like smoke, her clothes covered in ash from the cabin fire. Henry had driven her here in his pickup truck, neither of them speaking for the entire 30-minute ride. The cabin was gone. Eleanor's letters were gone. 24 years of birthday wishes burned to nothing. But the flash drive in Sarah's pocket held 200 photographs, core samples, survey maps, Henry's ledger, proof that Summit Mining had stolen a fortune. You sure about this? Henry's voice was hoarse. He hadn't stopped coughing since they'd left the mountain. No. Sarah pushed open the gate. But I'm doing it anyway. The front porch served as a waiting room, empty at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah walked inside without knocking. A woman sat behind a desk buried under case files, black hair pulled into a severe bun, dark eyes that assessed Sarah in under 3 seconds. You're pregnant, you smell like a house fire, and you've got that look. What look? The one that means someone powerful did something terrible and you want me to make them pay. Victoria Chen leaned back in her chair. Sit, talk. I've got 20 minutes before my next disaster. Sarah sat. She pulled out the flash drive, set it on the desk between them. Summit Mining Corporation has been extracting lithium from my grandmother's land for 30 years. Illegally, without permission, without payment. They found one of the richest deposits in the eastern United States, and they stole it. Chen didn't touch the flash drive. How much are we talking? $240 million, conservative estimate. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Interest, hunger. And you have proof. Core samples with coordinates that fall inside my property line, survey maps showing illegal drilling locations, a 30-year ledger documenting every trespass. Sarah's voice was steady. And a witness, a former Summit employee who logged the samples himself. Who? Henry Dawson. He's outside. Chen stood, walked to the window, looked at the old man sitting in his truck staring at nothing. Dawson worked for Summit for 35 years. He's got credibility. She turned back to Sarah. Why is he talking now? Guilt. My grandmother forgave him before she died. He wants to make it right. Making it right and testifying in court are different things. Summit will destroy him. He knows. Chen returned to her desk, finally picked up the flash drive, turned it over in her fingers like she was weighing its worth. Summit Mining Corporation, current market cap $4.8 billion. Their Tennessee lithium operation generates $600 million in annual revenue. She looked at Sarah. They have an army of lawyers whose only job is making problems disappear. They've been doing it for 3 decades. My grandmother was one of those problems. Yes, she was. Chen plugged the flash drive into her computer, started scrolling through photographs. Eleanor Whitmore filed 17 complaints with county and state agencies between 1988 and 2015. Every single one was dismissed. insufficient evidence, unreliable witness, mental instability. She wasn't mentally ill. I know, I met her once. Chen stopped scrolling, looked up. 2012. She came to my office with a box of documents, talked for 3 hours about corporate conspiracy and stolen land. I listened, I believed her, and I told her I couldn't help. Sarah's chest tightened. Why not? Because she had no physical evidence, no core samples, no survey maps, just her word against a billion-dollar corporation. Chen's voice carried old regret. She walked out that door and I never saw her again. I heard she died 2 years ago. I thought about her case every week since. Now you have the evidence. Now I have photographs of evidence. Chen turned the screen toward Sarah. Core samples that could be forged, maps that could be fabricated, a ledger that could be fiction. Summit's lawyers will argue every piece is fake. It's not fake. I believe you, but belief doesn't win lawsuits. Chen ejected the flash drive, handed it back. I need the original core samples. I need chain of custody documentation. I need expert geological analysis from someone who isn't your grandmother's neighbor. The samples are in the stone building, on the mountain. Then we need to get them, today, before Summit finds that building and destroys everything inside. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Henry. Someone's watching The Office, black sedan across the street. She showed Chen the message. Chen didn't even look surprised. They work fast. They probably had someone following you from the moment you arrived in Gatlinburg. She pulled out her own phone. I'm calling the sheriff. We're going to get those samples under police protection. Will that work? Honestly, I don't know. Summit has connections everywhere, but it's our best shot. Sheriff Tom Bradley arrived in 20 minutes. 60 years old, built like a truck with a handshake that could crush bones. Victoria, been a while. Tom, I need a favor. Last favor you asked for put 3 of my deputies in the hospital. This one's bigger. Bradley listened while Chen explained. Sarah watched his face, watched the skepticism shift to interest, then to something harder. Summit Mining. He said the name like it tasted bad. They've been throwing money at county commissioners for 20 years. Half my budget comes from their community partnership donations. Does that mean you won't help? It means I shouldn't help. Different thing. Bradley looked at Sarah. Your grandmother came to me in 2008, said Summit was trespassing on her land. I sent a deputy to investigate. He came back 3 days later and told me there was nothing to find. Was there? I don't know. That deputy bought a new truck the following week, cash purchase, never asked where the money came from. Bradley's jaw tightened. I've been waiting 15 years for someone to give me a reason to dig into that company. You're telling me you have evidence they can't bury? I'm telling you I have evidence they're trying very hard to bury. They burned my grandmother's cabin this morning. I heard the call. House fire on Hanson Ridge Road. Electrical, they said. There was no electricity. The power had been cut for 2 years. Bradley's expression changed. You're telling me it was arson? I'm telling you 2 men in a black SUV were watching it burn. They smiled at me when they drove away. The sheriff pulled out his radio. Dispatch, this is Bradley. I need 3 units at Hanson Ridge Road for a potential arson investigation, and I need another unit at Chen's office on Oak Street. Possible surveillance situation. The radio crackled. Copy that, Sheriff. Units en route. Bradley holstered the radio. Let's go get those samples. They drove up the mountain in a convoy. Bradley's cruiser in front, Chen's sedan behind, Henry's truck bringing up the rear with Sarah in the passenger seat. The black sedan followed them for the first 5 miles, then turned off onto a side road. They're not even trying to hide it. Sarah watched the sedan disappear in the side mirror. They don't need to. Henry's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Summit owns this county, has for 30 years. They're letting us know they can see everything we do. Then why haven't they stopped us? Because they don't think we can win. They've buried better cases than this. They're watching to see how much we know. Henry's voice dropped. And to find out who's helping us. The convoy turned onto Hanson Ridge Road. Sarah saw the cabin first, or what was left of it. A blackened skeleton of timber and ash still smoking in the afternoon sun. She didn't look away. She made herself see it. Bradley stopped his cruiser beside the ruins, got out, walked the perimeter with a camera documenting everything. No electrical service to this property since 2021. No gas lines. No natural cause I can identify. He photographed the ground near the back of the cabin. Accelerant patterns, gasoline probably. This was professional. Can you prove it was Summit? Not yet, but I can open an investigation. Bradley looked toward the tree line. Where's this stone building? Henry led them up the deer trail. Sarah followed more slowly, her body protesting every step. Chen walked beside her, not offering help, but staying close enough to catch her if she fell. You should be resting. Chen's voice was matter-of-fact. You're 7 months pregnant and you've had no sleep. I'll rest when this is over. That could be years. Then I'll sleep in the courtroom. The stone building appeared through the trees, still standing, still intact, but the door was open. Henry broke into a run. Sarah tried to follow, but her body refused. No, Henry's voice echoed back through the forest. No, no, no. Sarah reached the doorway and stopped. The crates were still there. The file boxes were still there. But the core samples were gone. Every single one. Henry stood in the middle of the empty building, his hands shaking. There were hundreds of them. 30 years of samples, all gone. Bradley examined the lock. Forced. Recently, within the last few hours. They knew. Sarah's voice came out hollow. They knew we were coming here. They beat us to it. Chen pulled out her phone. Started photographing the empty crates, the ransacked file boxes, the scattered papers on the floor. They took the samples but left the documents. Why? Because documents can be forged. Core samples can't. Bradley picked up a canvas wrapper that had held one of the cylinders. Geological evidence is specific, unique. You can carbon date it, analyze the mineral content, match it to specific drilling locations. Without the samples, you've got paper. With the samples, you've got proof. Sarah sank against the stone wall. Her legs couldn't hold her anymore. It was over. Summit had won. 30 years of Eleanor's work destroyed in a single morning. Wait. Henry was digging through one of the crates. She wouldn't have kept them all in one place. Eleanor was paranoid, but she was smart. What do you mean? She never trusted anything completely. Not people, not buildings, not hiding spots. Henry pulled out a folded piece of paper. She would have made backups, hidden samples somewhere else. Sarah took the paper. Eleanor's handwriting, a list of coordinates with notes beside each one. Primary storage, stone building. Secondary storage, root cellar. Emergency backup, place only Sarah knows. She read the last line 3 times. Place only Sarah knows. What does that mean? I don't know. Henry's face was pale. She never told me about any other hiding spots. Sarah closed her eyes, tried to remember. 8 years old. 3 summers spent on this mountain before her mother took her away. Where would Eleanor hide something she wanted only Sarah to find? The memory came slowly. Pieces at first, then all at once. A hot summer day. Eleanor leading her through the forest. A secret place that made Sarah gasp with wonder. The cave. Henry looked up. What cave? There's a cave. Behind the waterfall, on the north ridge. Eleanor took me there when I was 7. She said it was our secret, that I was the only other person who knew about it. Can you find it? I don't know. It was 24 years ago. Chen stepped forward. Try? Sarah pushed herself off the wall. Her body screamed. Her mind raced. She walked out of the stone building and faced north. The forest looked different now, taller, thicker, but the shape of the ridge was the same. The way the land rose toward the sky, the gap between 2 peaks that had reminded her of a broken tooth. This way. She walked. Henry followed. Chen and Bradley stayed behind to document the crime scene. The trail didn't exist anymore. Sarah pushed through underbrush, following something deeper than memory. Instinct, the pull of a place that had mattered to a little girl who'd been happy here. 45 minutes later, she heard it. Water, falling. The waterfall appeared through the trees, smaller than she remembered. Everything was smaller when you were 8. Behind it, Sarah pointed to the cascade of water. There's a ledge. You can walk behind the falls. Henry studied the approach. It's a 15-foot climb. In your condition, I can do it. She couldn't. Her body told her so with every movement. Her back spasmed. Her ankles wobbled. Twice she almost fell, but she kept climbing. The ledge was slick with spray. Sarah pressed herself against the rock face and edged behind the waterfall. The roar of water filled her ears. The cave opened up beyond, dark and cool and exactly how she remembered. Eleanor, Sarah whispered to the darkness. No answer, just echoes. She turned on her phone's flashlight, and there they were. 3 metal cases, military grade, waterproof, stacked against the back wall of the cave. Sarah opened the first one. Core samples. Dozens of them. each one labeled with coordinates and dates. The second case held documents, different from the ones in the stone building. These were internal summit memos, board meeting minutes, emails printed on paper that had yellowed with age. The third case held something that made Sarah's breath catch, a videotape, old format, Betamax. Labeled in Eleanor's handwriting, Summit Board Meeting, December 1987, proof. Sarah didn't know what was on that tape, but Eleanor had hidden it here in the most secret place she knew, protected by water and stone and the memory of a granddaughter she'd never stopped loving. I found you. Sarah pressed the tape against her chest. I finally found you. Getting down from the cave was harder than getting up. Sarah slipped twice. The second time, Henry caught her at the bottom. You're going to hurt yourself. I already hurt. Everything hurts. She showed him the cases, but I found what she hid. Henry opened the first case. His face changed when he saw the core samples. These are the originals, the ones from 1987, the first drilling operation. His hands were shaking. I logged these myself, 38 years ago. Will they hold up in court? If we can prove chain of custody, if we can get independent geological analysis. He pulled out one of the samples. Summit's lawyers will argue these were planted, fabricated, but these specific samples have drilling marks I can identify, machine signatures from equipment that doesn't exist anymore. And the tape, I don't know. I never saw Eleanor with video equipment. Henry looked at the label. December 1987. That was the month Summit's board approved the Tennessee expansion. If she somehow got footage of that meeting, then what? Then she got them admitting to the theft on camera. Sarah looked at the waterfall, at the cave that had hidden her grandmother's secrets for 37 years, at the evidence that Summit thought they'd destroyed. They were so sure they'd won. Her voice hardened. They burned the cabin, stole the samples from the stone building, followed us everywhere, and they missed this. Eleanor planned for everything. She knew they'd come for the evidence eventually. She created layers. Henry closed the case. She was the smartest person I ever met, and the loneliest. They carried the cases down the mountain. Sarah's arms burned. Her back felt like it might snap, but she didn't stop. Chen met them at the bottom. Her face lit up when she saw the cases. More samples, better? Sarah set down the third case. Video, December 1987, Summit Board Meeting. Chen opened the case, stared at the tape. Betamax. We'll need to find someone who can play this. I know a guy. So, Bradley had joined them. His face was grim. But we've got a bigger problem first. What? Dispatch just called. Someone filed a complaint against you. He looked at Sarah. Child endangerment. Reckless behavior while pregnant. They're saying you're putting your baby at risk. Who filed it? Anonymous. But the complaint was detailed. Knew you'd been sleeping rough. Knew about your homeless history. Knew your exact location this morning. Summit. They weren't just trying to destroy the evidence. They were trying to destroy her. Can they take my baby? Not today. But they can open an investigation, bring in social workers, make your life hell while the case proceeds. Bradley's voice was careful. It's a standard intimidation tactic. Make the plaintiff so busy defending themselves they can't focus on the lawsuit. Chen's face had gone cold. I've seen them do this before. To Eleanor. They filed 6 mental health complaints against her between 1995 and 2010. Every single one was anonymous. Every single one made her look unstable. What do we do soon? We fight on 2 fronts. Chen pulled out her phone. I'm calling Dr. Marcus Webb, best OBGYN in the county. We're getting you a full medical exam today. Documented evidence that you and your baby are healthy and that you're receiving proper care. I can't afford a doctor. I'm covering it. Consider it an investment in our case. Chen was already dialing. Marcus Victoria, I need a favor. Full prenatal exam, full documentation needs to happen in the next 2 hours. A pause. Yes, I know you're booked. Clear something. This is the Summit case. Another pause. Longer this time. Thank you. We're on our way. She hung up, looked at Sarah. Marcus and I went to law school together before he switched to medicine. He's delivered half the babies in this county. His word carries weight. Why is he helping? Because his brother invested in a small mining operation in 2003. Summit bought them out and left him with nothing. Marcus has been waiting for a chance to hit back. Chen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Summit made a lot of enemies over the years. They just never thought those enemies would connect. Dr. Webb's clinic was spotless and professional and nothing like the free clinic Sarah had been using for the past 8 months. The exam took 2 hours. Blood work, ultrasound, physical assessment. Dr. Webb documented everything with the thorough intensity of someone preparing for court. Baby's healthy, good weight, good position, good heartbeat. He turned the ultrasound monitor toward Sarah. She's active. That's a good sign. Sarah watched her daughter move on the screen. Tiny hands, tiny feet, a face that looked like a fuzzy promise. Is she going to be okay? She's going to be fine. You've taken better care of yourself than most mothers in your situation. Webb's voice was gentle. The stress isn't ideal, but you're strong. So is she. Dag. How do you know? But because she's still fighting, just like you. Sarah touched the screen, felt her daughter kick in response. I won't let them hurt you. She whispered the words like a prayer. I promise. Chen was waiting in the lobby when Sarah finished. How did it go? Clean bill of health, full documentation. Good. That neutralizes the child endangerment complaint. Chen handed her a folder. Now for the hard part. Inside the folder was a contract, contingency agreement, legal retainer. I work on contingency. If we win or settle, I take 33%. If we lose, you owe nothing. 33% of $240 million is a lot of money. It's also a lot of risk. Summit has unlimited resources. They can drag this case out for years. They can file motion after motion, appeal after appeal. Most lawyers wouldn't touch this because the fight would bankrupt them before they ever saw a courtroom. Chen's eyes were steady. I'm not most lawyers. Why do you want this case so badly? Because I turned your grandmother away 12 years ago. Because I've spent every day since wondering what would have happened if I'd had the courage to fight. Chen's voice dropped. And because Summit has been poisoning this county for 30 years and someone needs to stop them. Sarah signed the contract. Her handwriting looked shaky next to Chen's precise letters, but it was legally binding. What happens now? Now we file. Civil suit for mineral trespass fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We name Summit Mining Corporation, their board of directors, and every executive who signed off on the illegal drilling. How long will it take? To file 3 days. To get to trial 2 years minimum, maybe more. Chen tucked the contract into her briefcase. Summit will fight every step. They'll file motions to dismiss. They'll challenge our evidence. They'll try to settle out of court with conditions that keep you silent. I won't be silent. Good, because that's exactly what they're counting on. Chen stood. Go back to Henry's place tonight. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start building the case that destroys them. Henry's house sat in a hollow below the ridge. Small, weathered, warm. Sarah slept in a guest room that smelled like cedar and old books. The bed was soft. The blankets were heavy. She slept for 12 hours straight. The next morning she woke to voices downstairs. Chen was there. Bradley was there, and a third person she didn't recognize. A man in his 70s. Weathered face. Hands gnarled with arthritis. Eyes that carried decades of guilt. Sarah. Chen gestured toward him. This is Jack Holloway. The name meant nothing. Jack worked for Summit for 35 years, drill supervisor. He logged every illegal sample they ever took. Chen's voice was careful. He has documentation Summit thought they'd destroyed. Holloway stood slowly. His spine was curved. His movements were stiff. Stage 4 lung cancer, Sarah would later learn. 6 months to live. I was there in 1987. His voice was gravel and regret. I supervised the drilling on your grandmother's land. I knew it was illegal. I did it anyway. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm dying. And because Eleanor came to me years ago, asked me to keep records, asked me to be ready for this day. Holloway pulled a leather satchel from beside his chair. I've got everything. Drilling logs, internal memos, names of every executive who knew what we were doing. He set the satchel on the table, opened it. Inside were documents Sarah had never seen, different from Eleanor's, more detailed, more damning. This memo is from December 1987, board meeting, the one on your grandmother's tape. Holloway pulled out a yellowed page. It authorizes the Tennessee expansion and specifically references alternative acquisition methods for properties that refuse to sell. Alternative acquisition methods, corporate speak for theft. Holloway's jaw tightened. They drilled on 16 properties without permission, took samples, found lithium on 3 of them. Your grandmother's land had the richest deposit. What happened to the other two? The owners died. Car accidents? Both of them. Both within 6 months of refusing to sell. Holloway's voice dropped. I can't prove Summit killed them, but I know what I know. Sarah's blood ran cold. Are you saying they murdered people? I'm saying people who got in their way tended to have accidents. I'm saying your grandmother lived because she was too smart to travel alone. Holloway met her eyes. I'm saying you need to be very careful about who you trust. Chen had been silent through the conversation. Now she spoke. Jack came forward 3 days ago. He's been working with the FBI for 6 months. Sarah's head snapped toward her. FBI, federal investigation, wire fraud, securities violations, environmental crimes. Chen's expression was stone. Your civil case is about to become part of something much bigger. The doorbell rang. Bradley answered it. 2 people stood on the porch. Dark suits, government credentials. Ms. Whitmore, I'm Agent Patricia Voss, FBI. This is Agent Chen. We need to talk. They moved to Henry's kitchen. Bradley made coffee. Sarah sat at the table, surrounded by federal agents and lawyers and a dying man who had spent 30 years protecting evidence of corporate crimes. Summit Mining has been on our radar for 5 years. Voss spread photographs across the table. Environmental violations in 3 states. Securities fraud, bribery of public officials, but we could never make anything stick. Why not? Because they're careful. They destroy evidence. They silence witnesses. They have politicians on payroll who kill investigations before they start. Voss looked at Sarah. Then Jack Holloway walked into our field office with 30 years of documentation. Why didn't you arrest them? Because documentation isn't enough. We need physical evidence. We need witnesses willing to testify. We need something that proves beyond doubt that Summit Mining committed federal crimes. Voss pointed to the core samples Henry had brought from the mountain. Those samples might be what we need. Might be. We have to analyze them, confirm the coordinates, match them to Summit's drilling records. Voss leaned forward. If they prove what we think they prove, Summit's board of directors will face federal charges, RICO violations, conspiracy, possibly murder. Sarah's hand found her belly. The baby kicked. What do you need from me? Your cooperation, your evidence, your testimony when the time comes. Voss's voice softened. We know what Summit has done to you. The cabin fire, the surveillance, the child endangerment complaint. They're trying to scare you off. It's not working. Good, because they're going to get worse. Voss slid a card across the table. This is my direct number. Any threat, any suspicious activity, any contact from Summit or their representatives, you call me immediately. And then what? Then we build a case that puts them in prison for the rest of their lives. The meeting ended at noon. The FBI agents left with copies of everything. Holloway went home to rest. Chen stayed behind. You understand what this means? Her voice was quiet. This isn't just a civil lawsuit anymore. It's a federal investigation. The stakes are higher. The danger is real. The danger was always real. They burned my grandmother's cabin. They threatened my baby. Sarah's voice didn't waver. I'm not backing down. I didn't think you would. Chen smiled. It was the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from her. Your grandmother would be proud. My grandmother would be terrified. She spent 30 years alone because she knew what these people were capable of. She also spent 30 years preparing for this moment, making sure the evidence would survive, making sure you would have everything you needed to fight. Chen gathered her files. She didn't spend her life collecting proof just to have it burned. She hid it, protected it, waited for you. Sarah looked out the window at the mountains. The ridge where Eleanor's cabin had stood was visible in the distance, a scar of black ash against green forest. I read her letters, the ones that burned. Her voice caught. She wrote to me every year. Every birthday, 24 years of letters I never knew existed. Your mother intercepted them. To protect me, she thought if Eleanor couldn't reach me, Summit would leave us alone. Sarah's hands clenched. She was so scared. I never understood why. I thought she was just anxious, paranoid. She was keeping you alive. By lying to me, by telling me my grandmother was crazy, by making me believe the only family I had left was a paranoid old woman who didn't deserve my time. Sarah's voice broke. I could have known her. I could have had 24 more years with her. You have her now. Chen's voice was gentle. Her evidence, her legacy, her fight. That's the inheritance that matters. Henry appeared in the doorway. His face was gray. Something's wrong. He turned on the television, a news broadcast, local channel. The anchor's face was grim. Breaking news this hour. Federal investigators have launched a probe into Summit Mining Corporation following allegations of securities fraud and environmental violations. Summit's stock price has dropped 12% in early trading. Sarah watched the screen. Summit's headquarters. Protesters gathering outside. Executives hurrying past cameras with no comment. It's starting. Chen's voice was tight. Once the federal investigation goes public, Summit will get desperate. They'll do anything to shut this down. What can they do? Offer you money? Threaten you? Try to discredit you in the press? Chen turned off the television. Or worse? What's worse than burning down my home and threatening my baby? The answer came 3 hours later. Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Whitmore, this is Marcus Brennan, Chief Counsel for Summit Mining Corporation. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen, Summit is prepared to offer you a settlement, $5 million. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, drop the civil suit, and walk away. My grandmother's land is worth $240 million. You're offering $5 million. I'm offering you a chance to survive. Brennan's voice dropped. The federal investigation will take years. During that time, your civil case will be frozen. You'll have no income, no resources, no way to provide for your child. $5 million buys a lot of formula and diapers. You burned my home. I don't know what you're talking about. You filed a false child endangerment complaint. I don't know anything about that either. Brennan's tone changed, harder, colder. What I do know is that pregnant women have accidents all the time. Mountain roads are dangerous. Cars break down. Things happen. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. Summit Mining has survived 30 years of attacks from people smarter and more powerful than you. We will survive this too. Brennan paused. The only question is whether you survive with us. Go to hell. $5 million, Ms. Whitmore. Final offer. Take it or face the consequences. Sarah hung up. Her hands were shaking. She called Chen immediately, told her everything. He threatened you directly. He implied my car might have an accident. Did you record the call? No, I didn't think to. Doesn't matter. The threat is documented now. Chen's voice was cold fury. I'm calling Voss. This is witness intimidation. Federal crime. Sarah sat down slowly. Her legs wouldn't hold her. The baby kicked. Hard, angry. I know, Sarah whispered. I know. We're not giving up. Outside, a black sedan drove slowly past Henry's house. The driver looked directly at the window where Sarah sat. He smiled. Then he drove away. The black sedan appeared again at 6 a.m. the next morning. Sarah watched it from Henry's kitchen window, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had gone cold an hour ago. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Brennan's voice. Pregnant women have accidents all the time. The sedan sat at the end of the driveway for exactly 15 minutes. Then it drove away. Slowly, making sure she saw. They're trying to break you. Henry's voice came from behind her. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Summit's done this before. They call it psychological softening. Make the target paranoid. Make them see threats everywhere. The threats are real. That's what makes it effective. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Chen. FBI analysis complete. Results are significant. Meeting at my office 9 a.m. Bring everything. 3 hours later, Sarah sat in Chen's conference room surrounded by documents, core samples, and federal agents. Agent Voss spread photographs across the table, geological surveys, chemical analyses, coordinate mappings. The core samples you recovered are authentic. Carbon dating confirms they were extracted between 1987 and 1994. The mineral signatures match Summit's documented lithium operations. Voss tapped one of the photographs. And the coordinates prove they were drilled on Whitmore property, every single one. That's good news. Chen's voice was careful. Why don't you look happy? Because Summit knows we have them. Voss pulled out another document. Our sources inside the company report an emergency board meeting last night. They're preparing a response. What kind of response? Legal. They're going to claim the samples were planted. Fabricated evidence from a disgruntled former employee trying to extort the company. Henry slammed his palm on the table. That's a lie. I logged those samples myself. They know that. They're going to argue you've been planning this for decades. That you stole company property and manufactured evidence to support a fraudulent lawsuit. I have documentation. 35 years of records. Documentation can be forged. That's their argument. Voss looked at Sarah. They're going to put Henry on trial in the court of public opinion, destroy his credibility before he ever takes the stand. Sarah felt the room tilt. How do we stop them? We go first. Chen stood and walked to the window. Summit's strategy depends on controlling the narrative. We need to release our evidence before they can spin their version. Release it how? Press conference today. We lay out everything. The core samples, the coordinates, the drilling logs, the federal investigation. Chen turned to face them. We make this story so big that Summit can't bury it. Voss shook her head. That's risky. Public pressure could backfire. Summit has friends in media. They could turn this into a story about a homeless woman trying to shake down a legitimate corporation. They're already doing that. Sarah's voice was flat. They filed a child endangerment complaint. They're calling me desperate, unstable. She stood. Her back ached. Her ankles throbbed. She didn't care. My grandmother spent 30 years being called crazy, being dismissed, being ignored. I won't let them do the same thing to me. Sarah? No, you said Summit's strategy is to control the narrative. Then we take it from them. Sarah looked at Chen. Set up the press conference. The press conference happened at 2 p.m. in the courthouse lobby. Sarah stood behind a podium, cameras flashing microphones thrust toward her face. Chen stood beside her, Henry on the other side. Behind them, a table covered with evidence boxes. My name is Sarah Whitmore. 7 months ago, I was homeless, pregnant, sleeping behind dumpsters in Nashville. Sarah's voice didn't shake. 3 weeks ago, I inherited a cabin in the Smoky Mountains from my grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, a woman I hadn't seen in 24 years. A woman I was told was crazy. She paused. Let the cameras capture her face. My grandmother wasn't crazy. She was right. And I have proof. Chen took over laying out the evidence in precise legal terms. The core samples, the coordinates, the drilling logs, the federal investigation. She named Summit Mining Corporation directly. Named their CEO. Named their board of directors. The reporters erupted with questions. Ms. Whitmore Summit claims you're attempting to extort them. How do you respond? I respond with evidence. Core samples that prove illegal drilling. Documents that prove corporate conspiracy. A federal investigation that proves this goes far beyond one woman's lawsuit. What do you want from Summit Ka? Justice. Compensation for 30 years of theft. And accountability for everyone who helped cover it up. Are you afraid of retaliation? Sarah looked directly into the camera. Yesterday, a Summit executive called me and threatened my unborn child. 2 days before that, they burned my grandmother's cabin to the ground. 3 days before that, they stole evidence from a building they thought was hidden. Her voice hardened. I'm not afraid. I'm angry. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. By 3 p.m., it was the lead story on every local news channel. By 5 p.m., national outlets had picked it up. By 8 p.m., Summit mining scandal was trending on social media. Sarah watched the coverage from Henry's living room, her hand pressed against her belly, feeling her daughter kick with every mention of her grandmother's name. You did good. Henry handed her a plate of food she didn't want. Eleanor would have been proud. Eleanor would have done this 30 years ago if anyone had listened. People are listening now. Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Ms. Whitmore. Marcus Brennan's voice. Colder than before. That was a mistake. Threatening my baby was a mistake. You have no idea what you've started. Summit Mining has survived far worse than a press conference and a pregnant woman with a grudge. This isn't a grudge. It's a reckoning. You want a reckoning, Brennan laughed. It was an ugly sound. Fine, you'll get one, but don't say I didn't warn you. He hung up. Sarah stared at the phone. Her hands were steady. Her heart was racing. Who was that? Henry appeared in the doorway. Brennan, he said I made a mistake. You didn't. I know. Sarah set down the phone. He's scared. That's why he's calling. If Summit was confident, they wouldn't bother. The retaliation started at 6 a.m. the next morning. Sarah woke to Henry pounding on her door. Get up, now, something's happening. She stumbled downstairs. The television was on, a news broadcast. The anchor's face was grave. Breaking news this morning. Summit Mining Corporation has filed a $47 million defamation lawsuit against Sarah Whitmore Victoria Chen and former employee Henry Dawson. The lawsuit alleges a coordinated campaign of lies and fabricated evidence designed to damage Summit's reputation and stock price. Sarah's blood went cold. In a statement released this morning, Summit CEO Robert Thornton called the allegations, quote, baseless attacks from desperate individuals seeking to profit from corporate success. The company is also calling for a criminal investigation into the theft of proprietary geological data. They're suing us. Sarah's voice came out hollow. Henry's face was gray. $47 million. The phone rang. Chen. I saw it. I'm on my way. Chen arrived in 30 minutes. She looked like she hadn't slept. The lawsuit is harassment. They don't expect to win. They expect to drain our resources fighting it while the real case stalls. Can they do that? They're doing it. Chen spread documents across the table. This is called SLAP litigation, strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to silence critics by burying them in legal costs. What do? We file an anti-SLAP motion. Tennessee has protections for public interest speech. If we can prove Summit's lawsuit is retaliatory, we can get it dismissed and recover our legal fees. How long will that take? Months? Maybe a year. Chen's jaw tightened. That's the point. They're buying time. Every day we're fighting this lawsuit is a day we're not fighting the real case. So we fight both. Sarah, I'm one attorney. I can't. Then get more attorneys. Sarah stood. Her back screamed. She ignored it. My grandmother fought alone for 30 years. I won't make the same mistake. If we need more lawyers, we get more lawyers. With what money? Crowdfunding, media attention, whatever it takes. Sarah's eyes were fierce. Summit wants a war of attrition. Fine, but they're not the only ones who can outlast. The crowdfunding campaign launched that afternoon. Chen set it up. Sarah recorded a video explaining everything. The theft, the threats, the lawsuit designed to silence them. Within 6 hours, they raised $127,000. Within 24 hours, they raised $340,000. Within 72 hours, they raised over $1 million. Donations came from everywhere. Environmental activists, corporate accountability groups, people who had been cheated by Summit and never had the evidence to fight back. The money brought something more valuable than cash. It brought attention. 3 law firms offered pro bono support. A documentary filmmaker reached out wanting to tell the story. 2 congresspeople demanded hearings on Summit's environmental practices. Summit's stock dropped another 8%, but the retaliation escalated too. Day 4, Sarah received a package at Henry's house. No return address. Inside was a photograph of her at the press conference, her face circled in red marker. On the back, 2 words, "Stop now." Day 6. Someone slashed the tires on Henry's truck. All 4. In broad daylight. No witnesses. Day 8. Chen's office was broken into, nothing stolen, but every file related to the Summit case was photographed. They found the camera hidden in a smoke detector the next morning. Day 10. Sarah's phone rang at 3 a.m. Ms. Whitmore? A voice she didn't recognize. Male. Older. You don't know me, but I know you. I know where you sleep. I know you're 7 months pregnant. I know your baby is due in 8 weeks. Sarah sat up in bed. Her heart hammered. Who is this a concerned citizen? Summit Mining employs a lot of good people in this county. People with families. People who need their jobs. When you destroy Summit, you destroy them. Summit destroyed themselves. I'm just proving it. You're a homeless woman who got lucky with an inheritance. You think you can take down a $4 billion corporation? The man laughed. You're going to lose. And when you do, you'll have nothing. No money, no home, no family, just a baby you can't feed and a lawsuit you can't pay. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. Summit doesn't lose. They've never lost, and they're not going to start with you. He hung up. Sarah sat in the darkness, her hand pressed against her belly, feeling her daughter move. She didn't sleep again that night. Day 12 brought something worse. Agent Voss called at 8 a.m. Her voice was tight. We have a problem. Jack Holloway is dead. Sarah's stomach dropped. What? Heart attack. Last night. His wife found him this morning. He had lung cancer. He was dying anyway. The timing is suspicious. We had an interview scheduled for tomorrow. He was going to provide additional testimony about Summit's board meetings. Voss paused. We're investigating. Investigating what? What you think Summit killed him. I think Jack Holloway was 72 years old, with terminal cancer and a lot of enemies. Could be natural. Could be something else. Voss's voice hardened. Either way, we lost our best witness. Sarah hung up, sat down slowly, tried to process. Holloway was dead. The man who had kept records for 35 years? The man who had walked into the FBI with enough evidence to bring down Summit's entire board. Gone. What happened? Henry had heard her talking. Jack Holloway. Heart attack? Last night? Henry's face went white. Jack was healthy as a horse except for the cancer. His heart was fine. Voss is investigating. Investigating won't bring him back. Henry sank into a chair. Summit got to him. They always do. We don't know that. Don't we? Henry's voice cracked. I've watched them for 35 years. Anyone who threatens them ends up dead or destroyed. Eleanor. Now Jack. Who's next? Sarah didn't answer. She didn't have one. But that afternoon, something changed. Chen called. Come to my office, now. There's something you need to see. Sarah arrived to find the conference room crowded. Chen, Voss, 2 FBI technicians, and a television mounted on the wall connected to an ancient Betamax player. We found someone to convert the tape. Chen's voice was tense. Eleanor's video, from the cave. What's on it? We're about to find out. The technician pressed play. Static, then an image. Grainy, dark. Clearly filmed from a hidden position. A conference room. Large table. Men in suits seated around it. December 1987 according to the date stamp in the corner. Robert Thornton sat at the head of the table. 30 years younger, less gray, but unmistakably the same man who was now Summit's CEO. Gentlemen, we have a decision to make. Sarah leaned forward. The Whitmore property contains the richest lithium deposit we've ever surveyed. Conservative estimates put it at 2 to 3 million tons of recoverable ore. Current market value is minimal, but projections suggest lithium will be essential for emerging technologies within 20 years. A voice off camera. The owner won't sell. No, Eleanor Whitmore has rejected every offer. She's convinced we're trying to steal her land. Laughter around the table. She's not wrong. Thornton's voice was cold. Which brings me to option B. We proceed with extraction without her consent. Our geological surveys indicate the richest veins run beneath the property's northern boundary. If we drill from adjacent land and angle the bore, we can access the deposit without technically trespassing. That's illegal. It's creative interpretation. Thornton smiled. By the time anyone proves what we did, the statute of limitations will have expired. And even if they don't, what's the worst case? A fine we can pay from petty cash. Another voice. What about Whitmore? She's been making noise about our surveys. Eleanor Whitmore is a lonely old woman with no resources and no credibility. We've already started spreading word that she's mentally unstable. By the time she figures out what we're doing, no one will believe her. The tape continued. Detailed discussions of drilling coordinates, bribery of county officials, plans to destroy any evidence that linked Summit to illegal extraction. Sarah watched her grandmother's destruction being planned in real time. When the tape ended, the room was silent. Chen spoke first. That's Robert Thornton admitting to premeditated theft. On camera, with witnesses. Voss nodded slowly. This changes everything. This isn't just corporate fraud. This is RICO, conspiracy, criminal enterprise. Can we use it in court? We need to authenticate it, prove chain of custody, but if it holds up... Voss looked at Sarah. Robert Thornton goes to prison. Sarah stared at the frozen image on the screen. Her grandmother had gotten this footage somehow, had hidden it for 37 years, had died protecting it. How did Eleanor get this? Henry spoke up. His voice was hoarse. She had a contact inside Summit, a secretary who disagreed with what they were doing. The woman set up a camera before the meeting. Eleanor got the tape a week later. Who was the secretary? Margaret Chen. The room went still. Victoria Chen's face had gone white. My mother. Sarah turned to face her attorney. Your mother worked for Summit for 6 months. In 1987, she quit suddenly, moved to California, never talked about why. Chen's voice shook. She died 3 years ago. I found a letter in her effects that mentioned Eleanor Whitmore. I didn't understand what it meant. She was Eleanor's source. She got the tape. She must have. Chen pressed her hands against the table, steadying herself. My mother knew. All these years she knew what Summit did, and she never told anyone. She told Eleanor. She gave her the evidence. And Eleanor hid it, for decades, waiting for the right moment. Chen looked at Sarah. Waiting for you. The connection was staggering. 2 women separated by decades, linked by a secret that could destroy an empire. Margaret Chen had risked everything to get that tape. Eleanor Whitmore had sacrificed everything to protect it. and now their daughters were finishing what they started. This is why she took my case. Sarah's voice was quiet. When I walked into your office, you already knew. Your mother's letter mentioned Eleanor. I suspected. I didn't know. Chen's eyes glistened. I thought if I took the case, I might find answers. I never imagined this. What do we do now? Chen straightened, composed herself. When she spoke again, her voice was steel. We destroy them. The next 72 hours moved fast. Voss took the tape to federal prosecutors. Authentication experts confirmed it was genuine. The Department of Justice opened a formal investigation into Summit Mining Corporation. Chen filed an amended civil complaint, added Robert Thornton personally as a defendant, added the tape as Exhibit A. Summit's stock dropped 23% in a single day. The defamation lawsuit was quietly withdrawn, but Summit wasn't finished. Day 15. Sarah received a certified letter. Official court documents. What is this? Chen read it. Her face darkened. Custody petition, filed this morning. Anonymous complaint alleging you're an unfit mother. They're asking the court to take emergency custody of your baby when she's born. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. They can't do that. They're trying. The petition cites your homeless history, your lack of stable employment, the dangerous situation you've put yourself in by pursuing litigation against a major corporation. That's insane. That's desperation. Chen set down the papers. Summit knows they're losing the criminal case. They know the civil case is strong, so they're attacking you personally, trying to break you from the inside. By threatening to take my daughter, by making you spend the next 8 weeks fighting for custody instead of fighting them. Sarah's hands were shaking, not from fear this time, from rage. I won't let them. We'll fight it. Dr. Webb's documentation, your crowdfunding success, the public support. We have everything we need to prove you're a fit mother. How long? The hearing is in 2 weeks, right before your due date. 2 weeks. 14 days to prove she deserved to keep her own child. Summit had found the one weapon that could break her, and they'd used it without hesitation. Sarah walked outside. Needed air, needed space to think. The black sedan was parked across the street. The driver watched her through the windshield. Sarah walked directly toward the car. What are you doing? Chen called from the doorway. Sarah didn't answer. She walked up to the driver's window, knocked on the glass. The window rolled down. A man in his 40s, hard face, professional. Tell Thornton something for me. I don't know what you're talking about. Tell him my grandmother waited 30 years. Tell him I'll wait 30 more if I have to. Tell him that tape is going to put him in prison, and when it does, I'll be there to watch. Sarah leaned closer. Tell him he made a mistake threatening my daughter. Because now, this isn't business, it's personal. She straightened, turned, walked back to Chen's office. The sedan drove away 3 minutes later. Chen was waiting inside. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Sarah sat down heavily. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. They want to scare me into quitting fine. Let them try, but I'm done running. Sarah. My grandmother ran for 30 years. My mother ran for 10. They both died with secrets they never got to tell. Sarah's voice hardened. I'm not dying with secrets, and neither is my daughter. Chen studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, then let's win this. The custody hearing was scheduled for December 18th. Sarah's due date was December 27th. 9 days between fighting for the right to keep her daughter and actually giving birth to her. Chen prepared obsessively. Character witnesses, financial documentation, medical records. Letters of support from the crowdfunding donors who believed in Sarah's cause. Voss provided federal documentation showing Summit's pattern of witness intimidation. Dr. Webb testified via video deposition that Sarah was a healthy, capable mother. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Judge Patricia Calloway presided. 60 years old. Sharp eyes, a reputation for cutting through corporate manipulation. Summit's attorney presented their case first. Sarah's homelessness, her unstable living situation, the dangerous choice to pursue litigation while pregnant. Your Honor, Ms. Whitmore has repeatedly put her unborn child at risk. She's traveled up mountains at 7 months pregnant. She's engaged in confrontational behavior with corporate representatives. She's made herself a target for retaliation. By retaliation, do you mean the cabin fire, the surveillance, the threats? Judge Calloway's voice was dry. Because from where I'm sitting, the danger to Ms. Whitmore comes from your client, not from her own choices. Summit's attorney faltered. Your Honor, Summit Mining denies any involvement. Save it for the criminal trial. Calloway turned to Chen. Counselor. Chen laid out everything. Sarah's medical records, her crowdfunding success, the community support, the federal investigation that proved Summit's campaign of harassment. Your Honor, this custody petition is not about protecting a child. It's about silencing a witness. Summit Mining has spent 30 years destroying anyone who threatens their criminal enterprise. They killed Jack Holloway. They burned Eleanor Whitmore's cabin. They're trying to take Sarah's baby because they know it's the one weapon that might make her stop fighting. That's speculation. It's pattern recognition. Chen handed a document to the judge. This is a list of 17 individuals who filed complaints against Summit Mining between 1988 and 2020. 12 of them experienced accidents within 6 months of filing. 3 had their children removed by Child Protective Services. 2 died under suspicious circumstances. The courtroom went silent. Judge Calloway reviewed the document. Her expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. Mr. Brennan, is Summit Mining aware that witness intimidation is a federal crime? Your Honor, Summit categorically denies. I didn't ask what Summit denies. I asked if Summit is aware of the law. Brennan's face reddened. Yes, Your Honor. Good, because if I find any evidence that this custody petition was filed as part of a harassment campaign, I will refer this matter to the FBI personally. Calloway set down the papers. Petition denied. Ms. Whitmore retains full custody rights. Any further attempts to interfere with her parental status will be treated as contempt of court. She banged the gavel. Sarah's knees gave out. She would have fallen if Chen hadn't caught her. It's over, Chen whispered. They can't touch your baby. It's not over. Sarah steadied herself. But we won this round. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited, reporters shouting questions. The story had grown beyond anything Sarah imagined. She stopped at the top of the steps, faced the cameras. Today, a judge recognized what Summit Mining has been doing for 30 years. They don't just steal from the land. They steal from people. They destroy families. They take children from mothers who dare to fight back. Her voice carried across the crowd. My grandmother died alone because no one believed her. My daughter will not grow up in that world, and Summit Mining will answer for every crime they've committed. She walked down the steps, Chen beside her, Henry behind. The black sedan was gone, but Sarah knew they'd be back. 9 days until her due date. Weeks until the criminal trial. Months until the civil case reached verdict. The war was far from over. But for the first time, Sarah believed she might actually win it. That night, she felt the first contraction. The first contraction hit at 11:47 p.m. 9 days before Sarah's due date. She was sitting in Henry's kitchen reviewing documents with Chen when the pain ripped through her abdomen like lightning. Sarah, Chen looked up from her papers. It's happening. Sarah gripped the edge of the table. The baby's coming. Henry was on his feet immediately. I'll get the truck. Call Dr. Webb. Sarah's voice was strained. Tell him we're on our way. The drive to Gatlinburg Medical Center took 23 minutes. Sarah counted every second between contractions. 8 minutes apart. Then 7. Then 6. Faster, Henry. I'm going as fast as I can without killing us. They reached the hospital at 12:34 a.m. Dr. Webb was waiting at the emergency entrance with a wheelchair. How far apart? 5 minutes, maybe less. Let's get you inside.
Dear ma'am.
The labor room was bright and cold and smelled like antiseptic. Sarah changed into a hospital gown, monitors attached to her belly. The baby's heartbeat filled the room steady and strong. You're dilated to 6 centimeters. Webb checked the readout. This baby's in a hurry. Could be a few hours, could be less. Chen appeared in the doorway. I called Voss. She's sending agents to the hospital. Why? Because Summit knows you're here. They monitor emergency services. The moment you checked in, they knew. Sarah's jaw tightened. Let them come. I'm not going anywhere. The next contraction hit hard. Sarah gripped the bed rails, breathing through the pain the way the nurses had taught her. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Focus on the end goal. Her daughter was coming into the world. Nothing else mattered. 1:15 a.m., contractions 4 minutes apart. Henry paced the hallway outside. Chen made calls. Dr. Webb checked Sarah's progress every 15 minutes. 7 centimeters, you're doing great. Doesn't feel great. It never does, but you're strong. Your baby's strong. We've got this. 1:47 a.m., the door opened. Sarah looked up, expecting a nurse. Marcus Brennan stood in the doorway. Get out. Sarah's voice was ice. We need to talk. I'm in labor. Whatever you have to say can wait. No, it can't. Brennan stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. Summit is prepared to make a final offer, $3 million. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, drop the civil suit, and walk away. I've already refused your money. That was before the federal investigation, before the criminal charges, before the entire world started watching. Brennan moved closer. Summit's board is desperate. They'll authorize up to $5 million. Cash. Tonight. You take the money, disappear, raise your daughter somewhere far from here. Another contraction hit. Sarah gasped through it. Brennan waited unmoved. Your grandmother spent 30 years fighting us. She died with nothing. No money, no victory, no family. His voice dropped. Is that what you want for your daughter, to grow up watching her mother destroy herself, chasing justice that never comes? My grandmother died with the truth. That's more than Summit will ever have. Truth doesn't pay bills. Truth doesn't feed children. Truth doesn't... The door burst open. Chen stormed in, followed by 2 FBI agents. Mr. Brennan, you're interfering with a federal witness. Step away from Ms. Whitmore. I was just leaving. Brennan straightened his tie, looked at Sarah one last time. Last chance. $5 million. Think about your daughter. I am thinking about her. Sarah's voice didn't waver. That's why I'm going to watch your boss go to prison. Brennan's mask slipped. Just for a second. Something ugly flickered behind his eyes. You'll regret this. Get out. He left. The agents followed him into the hallway. Chen closed the door. Are you okay? No. Sarah's hands were shaking. But I will be. 2:23 a.m., 8 centimeters. The contractions were coming faster now, harder. Sarah gripped Chen's hand, breathing through each wave of pain. I keep thinking about Eleanor. Sarah's voice was strained. She went through this alone. No one to hold her hand. No one to tell her it would be okay. She had the mountain. She had her secrets. Secrets aren't the same as people. No, they're not. Chen squeezed her hand. But she had hope. She believed you'd come back. She believed you'd finish what she started. What if I can't? What if Summit wins? They won't. How do you know? Because my mother risked everything to get that tape. Because Eleanor spent 30 years protecting it. Because you stabbed Brennan with a pen when he threatened your baby. Chen almost smiled. Whitmore women don't quit, and neither do Chen's. The next contraction hit. Sarah screamed. 3:15 a.m. 9 centimeters. Dr. Webb was there now, nurses moving with practiced efficiency. The monitor showed the baby's heartbeat accelerating. She's ready. Are you Yes. Then let's bring your daughter into the world. The pushing started at 3:22 a.m., wave after wave of effort. Sarah's body screaming, her mind focused on one thing. Eleanor, for you, for all of us. 3:47 a.m., December 19th. A cry split the air. She's here. Webb held up a tiny, squirming, perfect human being. 7 pounds 2 ounces, healthy as can be. They placed the baby on Sarah's chest, warm, alive, real. Sarah looked down at her daughter's face, saw Daniel's nose, Eleanor's stubborn chin, her own exhausted, triumphant reflection. Hi, baby. Her voice broke. I'm your mom, and I'm going to tell you a story. They named her Eleanor Margaret Whitmore. Eleanor for the grandmother who'd fought alone for 30 years. Margaret for Chen's mother, who'd risked everything to get the tape. Whitmore because the name meant something now. It meant truth that couldn't be buried. Sarah spent 3 days in the hospital. Chen handled the press. Voss handled security. Henry brought flowers that he'd picked from his own garden. She looks like her great-grandmother. Henry's voice was thick. Same stubborn expression. She's going to need it. Maybe not. Maybe by the time she's old enough to understand, Summit will be gone and all this will be history. Maybe. Sarah looked at her daughter sleeping in the hospital bassinet. But I want her to know anyway. I want her to know what her family did, what they sacrificed. She will. The discharge papers came on December 22nd. Sarah signed them with one hand, holding Eleanor with the other. Chen was waiting in the lobby. Her face was tense. We need to talk. What happened? Robert Thornton was arrested this morning. Federal marshals picked him up at his home. He's being held without bail. Sarah's heart jumped. That's good news. There's more. Chen led her to a private waiting room, closed the door. Thornton is cooperating. He's turned on the rest of the board. He's naming names, providing documents, confirming everything we suspected. Why? Because the federal prosecutors offered him a deal, 20 years instead of life. Chen's voice tightened. He gave up everyone, executives, politicians, judges, everyone who ever took money from Summit. That's still good news. It is, but one of the names he gave up is Sheriff Bradley. Sarah's stomach dropped. Tom Bradley, he's been helping us. He was also taking Summit's money for 15 years. Brennan has records of payments totaling $400,000. That's impossible. Bradley opened the investigation. He documented the arson. Maybe he had a change of heart. Maybe he saw which way the wind was blowing. Chen shook her head. Either way, he's been arrested. The entire sheriff's department is under investigation. Sarah sank into a chair. Eleanor stirred in her arms, made a small sound of protest. Who else? 2 county commissioners, a state senator, the judge who dismissed Eleanor's complaints in 2003. Chen pulled out a document. And Marcus Brennan. He was arrested an hour ago. Conspiracy, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice. Brennan was here 3 days ago. He threatened me while I was in labor. I know. The hospital had security cameras. His visit was recorded. Chen almost smiled. He's facing additional charges for that. The federal prosecutors are thrilled. Sarah looked at her daughter. 3 days old. Born into a world where the people who'd tried to destroy her family were finally facing consequences. Is it over, Skutkum? The criminal case is just beginning. Trials will take months, maybe years. Chen sat down beside her. But Summit is finished. Their board is in custody. Their executives are cooperating. Their stock is worthless. Whatever happens in court, they'll never hurt anyone again. What about the civil case? That's the interesting part. Chen handed her an envelope. Summit's bankruptcy trustees contacted me this morning. They want to settle. Sarah opened the envelope, read the letter inside. They're offering $87 million. That's what's left in their accounts after legal fees and restitution. It's significantly less than the full value of Eleanor's land, but it's guaranteed money. No trial, no appeals, no waiting. What do you think? I think you've been fighting for 6 weeks. I think you have a 3-day-old baby. I think you deserve to rest. Chen's voice softened. But I also think your grandmother spent 30 years waiting for justice. If you want to fight for every dollar, I'll fight with you. Sarah looked at the letter. $87 million. More money than she could comprehend. Enough to rebuild the cabin 100 times over. Enough to ensure Eleanor would never want for anything. But was it justice? What happens to the land? That's separate from the money. The land is yours regardless. 80 acres free and clear. The mineral rights were technically leased to Summit, but the lease is void due to fraud. Everything underground belongs to you. So I could let another company drill, extract the lithium myself. You could, or you could protect it. There are conservation easements that would prevent any mining ever. The land would stay wild. Eleanor's mountain preserved forever. Sarah thought about her grandmother, the woman who'd talked to trees, who'd believed the land had memory, who'd died protecting something she loved more than her own life. I want the settlement, and I want to protect the land. Chen nodded. I'll make the calls. The settlement was finalized on January 3rd. $87 million transferred to an account in Sarah's name. After legal fees and taxes, she netted just over $58 million. $58 million. For a woman who'd been sleeping behind dumpsters 2 months ago, the money felt abstract, numbers on a screen, but what it represented was real. Security, safety, future. She bought a small house in Gatlinburg first, close to Henry, close to Chen, close to the mountain where everything had started. She set up a trust for Eleanor. Education, healthcare, whatever she needed for the rest of her life. She donated $5 million to a legal fund for victims of corporate abuse, named it the Eleanor Whitmore Justice Foundation. She paid off Henry's mortgage, covered his medical bills, told him it was Eleanor's money, not hers, and Eleanor would have wanted him taken care of. Henry cried. It was the first time Sarah had seen him do that. The criminal trial started in February. Sarah watched from the gallery Eleanor sleeping in a carrier against her chest. 3-month-old baby already attending federal court. Robert Thornton took the stand on day 4. Mr. Thornton, please describe Summit Mining's activities on the Whitmore property between 1987 and 1994. Thornton's voice was flat, defeated. We drilled without permission. We extracted core samples. We found lithium deposits worth approximately $240 million. And what did Summit do with this information? We continued extracting resources for 30 years. We paid nothing to the property owner. When Eleanor Whitmore complained, we launched a campaign to discredit her. What did that campaign involve? False reports of mental illness, Anonymous complaints to county services, bribery of local officials to dismiss her claims. Thornton paused. We destroyed her reputation so thoroughly that no one would believe her, even when she had evidence. Did Summit authorize threats against Ms. Whitmore or her family? Yes. Describe those threats. When Eleanor's daughter contacted her in 2005, Summit learned about it through surveillance. We sent representatives to deliver a message. Stop pursuing the case or her granddaughter would be harmed. Sarah's throat tightened. She'd known this, had heard it from Henry, but hearing it confirmed in federal court was different. Was Summit involved in the death of Jack Holloway? Thornton hesitated. I don't have direct knowledge. Mr. Thornton, you're under oath. Summit has used contractors for sensitive matters in the past. Holloway's death occurred 4 days before he was scheduled to testify. The timing was not coincidental. The gallery erupted. The judge called for order. Sarah held Eleanor tighter. The baby stirred, made a small sound, then settled. It's okay, Sarah whispered. We're almost done. The trial lasted 6 weeks. 23 witnesses, 4,000 pages of documents. The tape from Eleanor's cave played for the jury 3 times. Marcus Brennan took the stand on week 5. He looked different now, smaller. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his posture. Mr. Brennan, please describe your role in Summit's campaign against Sarah Whitmore. I coordinated legal responses, filed motions, managed media relations. Did you personally threaten Ms. Whitmore? I made strategic communications. On December 19th of last year, you entered Ms. Whitmore's hospital room while she was in active labor. What did you say to her? Brennan's jaw tightened. I offered her a settlement. Did you threaten her baby? I described potential outcomes. The hospital security footage shows you saying, quote, take the money or your baby never takes her first breath. Is that a strategic communication or a threat? Brennan didn't answer. Mr. Brennan, I was doing my job. Your job was to threaten a woman in labor. My job was to protect Summit's interests. And threatening to harm an infant protected Summit's interests. The jury watched Brennan struggle, watched him try to find words that wouldn't condemn him further. He couldn't find any. The verdict came on March 15th. Robert Thornton, guilty on all counts. Conspiracy, fraud, RICO violations, sentenced to 47 years. Marcus Brennan, guilty on all counts. Witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, sentenced to 23 years. 7 other executives, guilty, sentences ranging from 15 to 35 years. Sheriff Tom Bradley, guilty, corruption, accepting bribes, sentenced to 12 years. The judge's final statement echoed through the courtroom. Summit Mining Corporation operated as a criminal enterprise for 30 years. They stole from landowners. They bribed officials. They destroyed anyone who threatened to expose them, and they believed they were untouchable. He looked directly at Sarah. They were wrong, because one woman refused to stop fighting, because her grandmother preserved the truth for 30 years, because courage, in the end, is more powerful than corruption. The gavel fell. Sarah didn't cry. She didn't cheer. She just sat in the gallery holding her daughter, feeling something shift inside her. It was done. Not because justice was complete, not because the money made everything right, but because Eleanor's story finally had an ending. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited, reporters shouting questions. The story had become national news, international news, the biggest corporate prosecution in Tennessee history. Chen stood beside Sarah, Henry behind them, Eleanor sleeping peacefully through the chaos. Ms. Whitmore, what's your reaction to the verdict? Sarah looked at the cameras, thought about everything that had led to this moment. The dumpster in Nashville, the letter that found her, the cabin that burned, the cave that held secrets, the hospital room where she'd fought for her daughter's life. My grandmother spent 30 years telling the truth. No one believed her. They called her crazy. They called her paranoid. They tried to destroy her. Sarah's voice carried across the crowd. Today the world knows she was right. Today the people who hurt her are going to prison. Today her great-granddaughter is alive and safe and free. She looked down at Eleanor. The baby's eyes were open now, dark and alert and fierce. I name my daughter Eleanor, after a woman who never gave up, who believed that truth mattered even when no one was listening. Sarah's voice broke. My grandmother died alone, but she didn't die forgotten, and her story will be told as long as there are Whitmore women to tell it. She turned away from the cameras, walked down the courthouse steps, Chen and Henry flanking her like guardians. The black sedans were gone. The surveillance had stopped. Summit's watchers had disappeared the moment the arrests began. For the first time in months, no one was following her. They drove back to Gatlinburg in Chen's car. The mountains rose around them, familiar now in a way they hadn't been when Sarah first arrived. "What happens now?" Henry's voice came from the back seat. "Now we rebuild." Chen glanced at Sarah. "The criminal case is over, but there's still work to do. Victim restitution, environmental cleanup, making sure Summit's assets go to the people they hurt. And the land? The conservation easement was finalized last week. 80 acres protected forever. No drilling, no mining, no development." Chen smiled. "Eleanor's mountain will stay wild." Sarah looked out the window at the ridge where the cabin had stood, where the stone building still stood empty now, but preserved as evidence, where a cave behind a waterfall had held secrets for 37 years. "I want to rebuild the cabin." "The cabin burned down." "I want to build a new one. Same location, same design, but better." Sarah's voice strengthened. "I want Eleanor to grow up there. I want her to know the mountain. I want her to understand what her great-grandmother protected. That's going to cost money. I have money. For the first time in my life, I have more money than I know what to do with." Sarah touched her daughter's sleeping face. "And I know exactly what Eleanor would want me to do with it." The construction started in April. Sarah hired local workers, people who'd known Eleanor, people who'd dismissed her as crazy and lived to regret it. Mrs. Whitmore was a good woman. The foreman, 60 years old, had tears in his eyes. "We should have listened. All of us should have listened." "She forgave you, all of you." Sarah watched the foundation being poured. She understood why people were afraid. That doesn't make it right. No, but holding on to anger doesn't either. Sarah thought about everything she'd learned in the past 6 months, about corporate greed and personal courage, about secrets that destroyed and truths that healed. "My grandmother spent 30 years angry. I don't want to spend the next 30 the same way." The cabin was finished in September. Same location as the original. Same log construction, same view of the valley below, but with modern insulation, solar panels, a security system that would alert Chen and the FBI if anyone unauthorized approached. Sarah stood on the new porch, Eleanor in her arms, watching the sun set over the Smokies. "This is home," she whispered the words to her daughter. "This is where your great-grandmother lived. This is the land she protected, and someday it will be yours." Eleanor gurgled, reached toward the sunset with tiny fingers. "I know, it's beautiful." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. "Your great-grandmother thought so too." Henry joined them on the porch. He moved slower now. The cancer had progressed, but he'd refused treatment, said he wanted to see the cabin rebuilt before he died. "She would have loved this." His voice was thick. "Eleanor, seeing you here, seeing the baby." "She's here." Sarah believed it, had believed it since the moment she'd found the letters in the cave. "She's been here the whole time, watching, waiting, making sure we finished what she started." "Do you think she's at peace now?" "I think she was always at peace, even when she was fighting, even when no one believed her." Sarah leaned against the porch rail. "Peace isn't about winning. It's about knowing you did everything you could. And you have." "We have," Sarah corrected. "All of us. You, Chen, Webb, even Holloway in the end." She thought about the people who'd helped, the strangers who'd donated money, the lawyers who'd worked for free, the FBI agents who'd believed her when Summit was calling her crazy. My grandmother thought she was alone. She wasn't. She just couldn't see everyone who was on her side. Most of them weren't on her side until you showed up. Then I showed up at the right time. Henry smiled. It made him look younger. Made him look like the man he'd been before 35 years of guilt had bent his spine. You showed up exactly when Eleanor knew you would. The first anniversary of Sarah's arrival passed quietly. She spent the day reading Eleanor's letters, all 24 years of them, birthday wishes and life updates, and questions about a granddaughter who'd never written back. The last letter was dated 3 weeks before Eleanor died. "Dear Sarah, I don't know if you'll ever read these. I don't know if you'll ever come home, but I'm writing anyway because hope is the only thing they can't take from you. The cabin is ready. The evidence is hidden. Everything I've spent my life protecting is waiting for you. I know you might not come. I know your mother tried to keep you safe by keeping you away. I don't blame her. I don't blame you. But if you do come, if you do find this letter, know that I loved you every day, every year, even when you forgot I existed. You're a Whitmore woman. That means something. It means you don't quit. You don't bend. You don't let powerful men tell you what's true. I hope you have a life full of love and joy and everything I couldn't give you. I hope you never need to fight the way I did. But if you do need to fight, know that I'm with you. Always. In the mountain. In the wind. In the stubborn heart that beats in your chest. Finish this. For me. For you. For everyone who comes after. I love you. Eleanor. Sarah folded the letter carefully. Placed it in a box with all the others. Then she picked up her daughter and walked outside to watch the sunset over Eleanor's mountain. The mountain remembered. It always had. And now, so would the world. The documentary premiered in November. Mountain of Secrets, the Eleanor Whitmore story, told the whole history. 30 years of theft. 30 years of silence. And one woman who'd preserved the truth until someone could use it. Sarah watched it with Chen and Henry. Eleanor sleeping in her crib nearby. The final scene showed the new cabin. Sarah standing on the porch. The mountains rising behind her. My grandmother believed the land had memory, that stones could hold grudges, that trees could testify. Sarah's voice on screen was steady. I used to think that was crazy. Now I understand what she meant. The camera pulled back, revealed the valley, the ridge, the endless green of protected forest. This land remembers what Summit tried to do. It remembers Eleanor Whitmore, who spent her life defending it, and it will remember us, long after we're gone. The screen faded to black. Text appeared. Summit Mining Corporation was dissolved in 2024. Its executives are serving combined sentences of over 200 years. The Whitmore property is now protected under permanent conservation easement. Eleanor Margaret Whitmore is currently 2 years old. Henry wiped his eyes. She would have hated that documentary. Why? Too much attention. Eleanor never wanted to be famous. She just wanted to be believed. She's both now. Chen stood, stretched. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. New case. Another mining company? Different state, same tactics? Chen smiled grimly. Turns out Summit wasn't the only one stealing from people, but thanks to Eleanor, we know how to fight them now. Need help? I'll let you know. Chen hugged Sarah, kissed Eleanor's sleeping head. Take care of yourself. You've earned some peace. I'm not sure I know what that looks like. You'll figure it out. Chen walked to the door, paused. Your grandmother spent 30 years fighting. You spent 6 months. Maybe Eleanor can spend her childhood just being a kid. That's the plan. Good. Chen left. Sarah sat in the quiet cabin, listening to her daughter breathe. Peace. Such a strange concept after everything she'd been through. But maybe Chen was right. Maybe the fighting was over. Maybe Eleanor could grow up in a world where corporations faced consequences and truth-tellers were believed. Or maybe new fights would come. New injustices would demand attention. New Whitmore women would have to stand up and say enough. Either way, Sarah was ready. She'd learned from the best. Henry Dawson died on a Tuesday morning in December, 3 years after Sarah first arrived on the mountain. She was with him when it happened. Sitting beside his bed in the hospice room, holding his hand while the monitors beeped slower and slower. Tell Eleanor I'm sorry. His voice was barely a whisper. Tell her I should have spoken up sooner. She knows, Henry. She always knew. I wasted 30 years being afraid. 30 years watching her fight alone. A tear slid down his weathered cheek. Promise me you won't do the same. Promise me you'll teach your daughter to speak up even when it's hard. I promise. Henry's grip tightened on her hand, then relaxed. The monitors went flat. Sarah sat with him for another hour, holding his hand, remembering the man who'd kept her grandmother's cabin ready for 2 years. The man who'd carried guilt like a stone around his neck until it finally crushed him. The man who'd spent his last years trying to make up for decades of silence. You made it right, she whispered. In the end, you made it right. The funeral was small. Chen was there. Dr. Webb, a few neighbors who'd known Henry for 50 years. Sarah stood at the graveside with 3-year-old Eleanor in her arms, watching them lower the casket into frozen ground. Who was he, Mama? Eleanor's voice was small and curious. He was a friend, a very good friend, who made some mistakes and spent his whole life trying to fix them. Did he fix them? Sarah looked at her daughter, dark eyes full of questions, stubborn chin that came from generations of Whitmore women. Yes, baby, he fixed them. They walked back to the car together. Chen fell into step beside them. The foundation received another donation this morning, $200,000 from an anonymous donor in California. That's the third one this month. People are paying attention. The documentary won 2 awards, The book is being translated into 12 languages. Chen smiled. Eleanor Whitmore is becoming a symbol. She'd hate that. Probably, but she'd love what it's accomplishing. Chen opened the car door for this. We've funded 17 lawsuits against mining companies in the past year. 8 of them have already resulted in settlements. Corporate behavior is actually changing. Sarah buckled Eleanor into her car seat. The little girl was already falling asleep, exhausted from standing in the cold. It's not enough. It's never enough, but it's more than we had before. Chen climbed into the driver's seat. One fight at a time, that's how mountains move. The drive back to the cabin took 40 minutes. Sarah watched the familiar roads wind through mountains that had become home. Every curve held memories now. The spot where she'd first seen the cabin, the trailhead where she'd climbed to the stone building, the hospital where Eleanor had been born. 3 years. So much had changed. The cabin came into view through the trees, smoke rising from the chimney, solar panels catching the weak winter sun, a structure that looked like it had always been here even though it was only 2 years old. Home, Eleanor murmured sleepily. Yes, baby, home. Inside, Sarah built up the fire while Eleanor napped. The cabin was warm and quiet, filled with the particular peace of a house that had witnessed both tragedy and triumph. She pulled out Eleanor's letters. The box she kept on the highest shelf away from curious little fingers. 24 years of birthday wishes, various sources from a grandmother who'd never stopped hoping. Sarah read them sometimes, when the world felt heavy, when she wondered if she'd done the right thing, when she needed to remember why she'd fought. Today she read the last one again. Finish this. For me, for you, for everyone who comes after. I'm trying, Eleanor. Sarah spoke to the empty room. I'm trying. The phone rang. Chen's number. We have a problem. Sarah's stomach tightened. After 3 years, she'd learned that those words usually meant trouble. What kind of problem? Robert Thornton is up for parole? That's impossible. He was sentenced to 47 years. He was, but his lawyers filed an appeal based on prosecutorial misconduct. The appeals court just ruled in his favor. His sentence has been reduced to time served. Sarah felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Time served? He's been in prison for 3 years. I know. He stole $240 million. He threatened to kill my baby. He destroyed my grandmother's life. I know, Sarah. I know. Chen's voice was strained. The ruling is political. Thornton has friends in high places, friends who've been working to get him out since the day he went in. Can we fight it? We can appeal. We can go to the media. We can make noise. Chen paused. But realistically, he's going to be released. Probably within the month. Sarah sank into the rocking chair. The same chair Eleanor had sat in for 30 years, watching the mountain and waiting for justice. What does this mean for us? Legally nothing. Your civil settlement is final. The criminal convictions of the other defendants still stand. Summit is still dissolved. Chen's voice dropped. But Thornton is vindictive. He blames you for everything. If he gets out, he might try something. Like what? I don't know. But I want you to be careful. Extra security, extra vigilance. Don't go anywhere alone. Sarah looked at her sleeping daughter. 3 years old. Innocent. Unaware of the monsters that still lurked in the shadows. I spent 6 months living in fear, watching over my shoulder, wondering if every car was following me. Sarah's voice hardened. I won't live like that again. Sarah. No, I meant what I said at the press conference. I'm done being afraid. If Thornton wants to come after me, let him try, but I won't hide, I won't run, and I won't teach my daughter that powerful men get to win just because they're powerful. Chen was silent for a long moment. Okay, but promise me you'll be careful. I'll be careful, but I won't be scared. She hung up, sat in the rocking chair, listened to the fire crackle and her daughter breathe. Robert Thornton was getting out, the man who'd orchestrated everything. The man who'd called her grandmother crazy and threatened her baby and burned her cabin to the ground. 3 years in prison for 30 years of crimes. It wasn't justice. It wasn't even close. But Sarah had learned something in the past 3 years. Justice wasn't a destination. It was a direction. You moved toward it step by step, knowing you might never arrive. Eleanor had understood that. She'd spent 30 years fighting knowing she might never win. But she'd fought anyway because some truths demanded telling regardless of the outcome. Sarah would do the same. The news broke 2 weeks later. Robert Thornton, former CEO of Summit Mining Corporation, released from federal prison. Cameras captured him walking out the gates surrounded by lawyers refusing to answer questions. The story ran on every network. Social media exploded with outrage. The Eleanor Whitmore Justice Foundation released a statement calling the release a travesty of justice. Sarah watched the coverage from her living room, Eleanor playing with blocks on the floor. "Who's that man, Mama?" Sarah looked at her daughter, considered lying, decided against it. "That's a bad man who hurt a lot of people. He went to prison, but now he's out." "Why? Because sometimes the world isn't fair. Sometimes bad people get away with things they shouldn't." Eleanor frowned. The expression was pure Whitmore. Stubborn, determined. "That's not right?" "No, baby, it's not." "Can we make it right?" Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Pride. Hope. The recognition that the fight would continue through generations. "We can try. That's all anyone can do." Thornton appeared on a news program 3 days later. Sarah watched her hands clenched as he presented himself as a victim, a businessman unfairly persecuted, a man who'd made mistakes but paid his debt to society. "I have nothing but sympathy for the Whitmore family," Thornton said, his voice dripping with practiced sincerity. Eleanor Whitmore was clearly troubled. Sarah Whitmore was manipulated by lawyers who saw dollar signs. "I hope they can find peace." "He's lying." Sarah's voice was tight. "Of course he's lying." Chen had come over to watch with her. "That's what he does. He's going to rewrite history, make himself the hero and us the villains. He's going to try." Chen turned off the television. "But he can't change the facts. The evidence is public record. The documentary exists. The Foundation has helped hundreds of people. His narrative doesn't erase ours." "It feels like it does." "I know." Chen put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "But remember what Eleanor did. She spent 30 years being called crazy, being dismissed, being ignored, and she never stopped telling the truth. The truth outlasted the lies. It always does." Sarah nodded slowly. "So what do? We keep going. We keep fighting. We keep telling the story." Chen's eyes were fierce. "Thornton wants us to give up, to accept his version of events, to let him win." "That's not going to happen." "No, it's not." The letter arrived a week later, handwritten, no return address. Sarah recognized the handwriting from thousands of documents she'd reviewed during the trial. Robert Thornton's personal script. She opened it with shaking hands. "Ms. Whitmore, I hope you're enjoying your grandmother's mountain. I understand it's quite beautiful this time of year. I want you to know that I harbor no ill will toward you. You were manipulated by unscrupulous lawyers and federal agents with political agendas. I don't blame you for what happened, but I do want to set the record straight. Your grandmother was unstable. The evidence she collected was fabricated. The testimony against me was coerced. The entire case was a miscarriage of justice. I've spent 3 years in prison for crimes I didn't commit. Now I intend to spend the rest of my life clearing my name. You should know that I've retained new legal counsel. We'll be pursuing defamation claims against everyone involved in my prosecution. That includes you, Ms. Chen, and the so-called Eleanor Whitmore Justice Foundation. I'll be seeking $200 million in damages. More than enough to bankrupt your little charity and leave you exactly where you were when this started. Behind a dumpster, where you belong. This isn't a threat. It's a promise. See you in court. Robert Thornton." Sarah read the letter 3 times, then she called Chen. "He's suing us." "I know. I received my copy an hour ago." $200 million. "He won't get it. He doesn't have standing. The convictions still exist, even if he was released early." Chen's voice was calm, professional. "This is intimidation. He wants to drain our resources fighting frivolous lawsuits. He tried this before, with the defamation suit during the original case. And we beat him. We'll beat him again." Chen paused. "But Sarah, this is going to be expensive, time-consuming, exhausting." "I know." "Are you sure you want to fight? You have money now. You could settle, pay him off, make it go away." Sarah thought about her grandmother, about 30 years of fighting alone, about the letters that had never been delivered and the truth that had almost been buried forever. Eleanor didn't settle. Eleanor didn't pay off the people who hurt her. Eleanor died alone with nothing. Eleanor died with integrity, with courage, with the knowledge that she'd never stopped fighting for what was right. Sarah's voice hardened. "That's worth more than money. That's worth more than peace." "Then we fight." Then we fight. The lawsuit dominated the next 18 months. Thornton had hired the best attorneys money could buy, former federal prosecutors, corporate litigation specialists, a team of 20 lawyers working around the clock to destroy Sarah's credibility. They subpoenaed everything: financial records, medical records, every email Sarah had ever sent, every social media post, every statement she had made to the press. They deposed her for 6 days. Chen sat beside her, objecting to invasive questions, protecting her from the worst of the harassment. "Ms. Whitmore, is it true that you were homeless when you received your inheritance?" "Yes." "Living behind dumpsters?" "Sometimes." "And in the span of 6 months, you went from sleeping in alleys to receiving a $58 million settlement?" "Yes." "That's quite a transformation. Some might call it suspicious." Chen objected. The question was withdrawn, but the implication lingered. Sarah could see it in the way Thornton's lawyers looked at her. The judgment. The assumption that she'd orchestrated everything for money. It wasn't true. But truth didn't always matter in courtrooms. Eleanor turned 5 during the lawsuit. Sarah threw her a birthday party at the cabin, surrounded by the few people she trusted. Chen, Dr. Webb, some neighbors who'd become friends. "Make a wish, baby." Eleanor closed her eyes tight, blew out the candles, opened her eyes with a smile. "What did you wish for?" "Can't tell. It won't come true." "That's the rule." Later, after the guests had left and Eleanor was asleep, Sarah sat on the porch watching the stars. Chen joined her with 2 glasses of wine. "How are you holding up?" "I'm tired, I'm scared, I'm angry." Sarah sipped the wine. "Some days I wonder if it's worth it, if I should have just taken Thornton's money and disappeared." "Why didn't you—" "Because Eleanor is watching, not my daughter, my grandmother." Sarah looked at the stars. "I feel her sometimes, in the wind, in the way the light hits the mountain. She's here. She's always been here. And she wouldn't want me to give up." "What would she want?" "She'd want me to tell the truth, no matter how hard it is, no matter how long it takes." Sarah set down her glass. "The lawsuit isn't about money. It never was. It's about who gets to write history. Thornton wants to erase what he did. I want to make sure the world never forgets." "That's a heavy burden." "It's not a burden. It's an inheritance." Sarah smiled slightly. "The most important thing Eleanor left me wasn't the land, or the evidence, or the money. It was the understanding that some fights are worth having, even if you lose." The verdict came on a Wednesday afternoon. Sarah sat in the courtroom, Chen beside her, while the judge read the decision. After careful review of all evidence and testimony, this court finds that the plaintiff's claims are without merit. The defamation allegations fail on multiple grounds. The evidence presented during the original criminal trial remains valid and uncontested. The plaintiff's attempt to relitigate his conviction through civil proceedings is inappropriate and borders on abuse of process. The judge looked directly at Thornton. "Mr. Thornton, you were convicted of serious crimes by a federal jury. Your early release does not expunge those convictions. Your attempt to silence the people who brought you to justice is reprehensible." She turned back to her papers. "The defendant's motion to dismiss is granted. The plaintiff's lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, this court awards attorney's fees to the defendants in the amount of $3.7 million. The gavel fell. Sarah didn't move, didn't breathe. Chen squeezed her hand. "We won." "We won?" Thornton's face was red with rage. He was shouting at his lawyers, gesturing wildly, demanding appeals. But it was over. Finally, truly over. Sarah walked out of the courtroom into a crowd of reporters. "Ms. Whitmore, what's your reaction to the verdict?" She thought about all the things she could say, the speeches she'd rehearsed, the sound bites that would play well on television. Instead, she said something simple. "The truth won. That's all that matters." Thornton died 6 months later. Heart attack, alone in his apartment. His lawyers found him 3 days after the fact. Sarah heard the news while she was reading to Eleanor before bed. Her phone buzzed. Chen's message was brief. "Thornton is dead. Heart attack. It's over." Sarah stared at the message for a long time. "What is it, Mama?" "Nothing, baby. Just some news." "Good news or bad news?" Sarah considered. Thornton had tormented her family for decades. He'd destroyed her grandmother's reputation. He'd threatened her daughter. He'd tried to steal everything they had. But he was also a human being, a father, a husband once, someone who'd made terrible choices and never found the courage to make better ones. "I don't know, baby. Sometimes news is just news." That night, after Eleanor was asleep, Sarah walked to the edge of the property. The spot where the original cabin had stood before, its font burned. Where Eleanor had lived for 50 years, fighting battles no one else would fight. "It's over," Sarah spoke to the darkness. "Thornton is dead. Summit is gone. The mountain is protected forever. The wind moved through the trees, cold, clean, alive. I finished it, Eleanor. Everything you started, everything you sacrificed, it wasn't for nothing. She stood there for an hour, feeling the presence of the woman she'd never really known, the grandmother who'd written 24 years of letters that were never delivered, the fighter who'd believed in truth when no one else would. Thank you. Sarah's voice broke. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for believing I'd come back. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. The wind rose, the trees swayed, and Sarah could have sworn she heard a voice in the rustling leaves. I knew you would. The years passed. Eleanor grew, started school, made friends, developed the stubborn streak that marked every Whitmore woman. Sarah rebuilt the foundation, expanded its reach, funded lawsuits in 30 states, changed policies, changed laws, changed the way corporations treated the land and the people who lived on it. Chen retired eventually, passed the foundation's legal work to younger lawyers she'd trained. She visited the cabin once a month, whilst watched Eleanor grow, remembered the mother she'd never really known. My mother would be proud, Chen said one evening watching the sunset. She took that tape because she believed someone would use it someday. It took 37 years, but someone did. 2 someones. Sarah smiled. She saved it. Eleanor hid it. I found it. 3 generations of stubborn women. That's how mountains move. Eleanor turned 10 on a December morning exactly 7 years after Sarah had received the letter that changed everything. They celebrated at the cabin, a small party, close friends, the people who'd been with them since the beginning. I have something for you. Sarah handed her daughter a box. It's from your great-grandmother. Eleanor opened it carefully. Inside were the letters. All 24 years of them. What are these letters from the woman you're named after? She wrote to me every year on my birthday, even though she knew I'd never read them. Sarah's voice was thick. I want you to have them, so you understand where you come from, what your family fought for, why your name matters. Eleanor picked up the first letter. Read it slowly, her lips moving with the words. She sounds nice. She was. She was also fierce and stubborn and impossible. She believed things no one else believed. She fought battles no one else would fight. Sarah knelt beside her daughter. And she loved you, before you were born, before I was born. She loved the idea of you, the possibility of you, the hope that someday a Whitmore girl would finish what she started. Did I finish it? Not yet. You're only 10. Sarah smiled. But someday there will be something that needs fighting. Something wrong that needs to be made right. And when that day comes, you'll know what to do. How? Because you're Eleanor Margaret Whitmore, and Whitmore women don't quit. The documentary won more awards. The book became a bestseller. The foundation grew into one of the largest environmental justice organizations in the country. But Sarah's proudest achievement wasn't the awards or the money or the influence. It was watching her daughter grow up on Eleanor's mountain, learning the trails, exploring the cave behind the waterfall, sitting on the porch during thunderstorms unafraid. The mountain teaches you what you need to learn, Sarah told her once. That's what your great-grandmother always said. What did it teach you? That truth matters, that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision that something else is more important than fear, that one person can change everything if they refuse to be silent. Is that why we stay here even when other places would be easier? This is where we belong. This is where our story started. This is where it continues. Sarah looked at the ridge where the original cabin had stood. Someday this will all be yours. The mountain, the foundation, the responsibility. Are you ready for that? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. 10 years old, but with eyes that held something older. Something inherited. I don't know if I'm ready, but I'll try. She looked at her mother. That's what Whitmores do, right? We try, even when it's hard, even when we're scared. That's exactly what Whitmores do. Sarah was 52 when the final piece of justice arrived. The Tennessee state legislature passed the Eleanor Whitmore Act, comprehensive reform of mining regulations, mandatory disclosure of all drilling activities, criminal penalties for environmental fraud, protection for whistleblowers. Governor signed it in a ceremony that Sarah attended with her daughter, now 22 and studying environmental law. This legislation exists because of one woman, the governor's voice echoed through the chamber. Eleanor Whitmore spent 30 years fighting for protections that no one else would champion. She was called crazy. She was called paranoid. She was called a troublemaker. He paused, looked at Sarah in the front row. She was right. And today we finally have the courage to say so. The room erupted in applause. Sarah didn't clap. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face, feeling her grandmother's presence in the chamber. "You did it," she whispered. "After all these years, you did it." Young Eleanor squeezed her mother's hand. "We did it, all of us together." The ceremony ended. Reporters surrounded them. Cameras flashing, questions shouting. Sarah answered them all. Told the story one more time. Made sure the world understood what Eleanor Whitmore had sacrificed and why it mattered. Then she drove home. Back to the cabin. Back to the mountain. Back to the place where everything had started. She walked to the edge of the property. The same spot where she'd stood so many times before. Where she'd talked to a grandmother she barely remembered and thanked her for a legacy she was still trying to understand. "It's done," Sarah spoke to the wind. "The law has your name on it. Your name, Eleanor. Your name will protect this land forever." The trees rustled, the wind rose, and somewhere in the sound, Sarah heard the reply she'd been waiting for. "I know. I always knew you'd finish this." Sarah smiled, wiped her tears, turned back toward the cabin where her daughter was waiting. 25 years, a quarter century since she'd received that letter behind a dumpster in Nashville, since she'd found out that the grandmother she'd forgotten had left her everything. Not the money, not the land, not even the evidence. The inheritance that mattered was simpler than that. It was the knowledge that truth was worth fighting for. That one person could change everything. That courage passed down through generations like eye color or stubbornness. Sarah Whitmore had inherited that courage, had used it, had passed it on to her daughter, and now her daughter would pass it on again. The sun set over Eleanor's mountain, the same sunset that had painted these ridges for millions of years, the same sunset that would paint them for millions more. Sarah walked into the cabin, sat down with her daughter, opened the box of letters. "Tell me about her again," young Eleanor said. "Tell me about the woman I'm named after." Sarah smiled, picked up the first letter, started reading, and the story continued the way it always had, the way it always would. Because some truths demand telling. Some fights demand fighting. Some mountains demand climbing. And Whitmore women never quit. They never had. They never would. The mountains remembered. The world remembered. And 3 generations of women who'd refused to be silenced had proven what Eleanor Whitmore had known all along. Truth buried is still truth waiting. And someday someone always comes to dig it up.